All right. Salute. Top of the afternoon, everybody. This is the New Era Younglord Book Club, also known as the AfroTaino Book Club. If this is your first time here, I do believe in socialism, free education, free housing, and free healthcare. So by tapping the screen and sharing this live, it's just showing me a little bit of socialist love and support to be able to get the message out to the masses. We are going over the Huey P. Newton Reader. This is the part 3, and I say part 3 because we did 3 segments. If you guys aren't following, go follow me on YouTube. It's still AfroTaino88, and this is the 3rd time that we're doing this book. We still have a couple of hours left of the book. We have about 10 hours and 11 minutes. Salute. We got about 10 hours and 11 minutes left, so we'll probably get a couple of chapters done today, and then we'll be back at it tomorrow with part 4. But salute to everybody. Tap that screen, share this live. Again, we are also live on YouTube, so if you guys missed anything or want to catch up on some of the stuff you couldn't fully watch the last time, go tap in on YouTube. And we're live now on YouTube, so you could definitely hop over there and go show some love, subscribe, hit the notification bells, and all that good stuff. Let's not forget the Young Lords Back to Borinquen project. We are going to Puerto Rico October 5th to the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. We will be in Yabucoa, Puerto Rico at the Marco Sanchez Community Center. Marco Sanchez Community Center was a school that got closed down due to lack of funds and resources that the community took over to be able to allocate it for community purposes, emergency shelters, and all that good stuff. So it's a big school, a big compound, so it needs all the help it could get. Is run off donations. It is a nonprofit, so everybody go look up the Marco Sanchez Community Center. But without further ado, because I don't want to miss a step and I want to get right into it, I rewinded about 30 seconds because the first part of the trial, they don't give a break into it. So this is the second part of the trial. So the last hour we listened to on the last segment was the first portion of the trial, and this is the second portion of the trial. Just do me a favor, guys. Don't forget to go check over on YouTube. Go follow, like, subscribe here on TikTok. All donations, all gifts will be going to the Young Lords Back to Borinquen project. All subscriptions. If you guys want to hit the Cash App, it is AfroTaino88, the same as my name. $sign AfroTaino88. Salute to everybody. Let's get it rocking. Let's get it going. Picking up right where we left off. I had to plug my phone in.
So we know who will win, and a lot of damn nigger lovers will be laying right there beside them. I wish Hitler had won, and then we could have kicked off the shinnies and started it on the coons. KKK. Gary's request for a mistrial was denied by Judge Friedman, who refused to acknowledge that I was receiving anything but a fair trial. He felt the letters were negligible and unimportant. After this, Gary opened the defense and began on the morning of August 19 to show the jury where the truth lay. He introduced a group of witnesses who were essential to those political aspects of the case that we had been so determined to explore from the beginning. These were people from the Black community. Ordinary, honest working people who could testify with sincerity and conviction about how their lives were frequently made difficult by the occupying army of racist police. These people described being stopped, questioned, bullied, pushed around, and insulted for no reason other than the sadistic whim of some Southern cracker who hated blacks. These were the people brutalized by intruders in their own community. All had one thing in common: encounters with Officer John Frey. Daniel King, 16, related on the stand how he had met Frey around 4 o'clock one morning in West Oakland, where he was visiting his sister. They had gone out to get something to eat on 7th Street, and there, incredibly enough, had encountered a white man with no pants on. He was with Frey. Frey told King he was violating curfew, and the white man accused him of knowing the girl who had taken his pants. When King denied this, both Frey and the white man called him nigger, pimp, and other dirty words. Frey had held King while the white man hit him. Then he put him in a paddy wagon and took him to Juvenile Hall, where he spent the rest of the night. Frey did not even bother to call King's parents. Luther Smith, Sr., who worked with a youth organization in Oakland, told of a number of run-ins with Frey. He testified that Frey was awful mean and had used racial epithets when talking to him. Frey had called Smith's brother a little black nigger and his son's wife a black bitch. Belford
F1,
Dunning,
F1.
an employee of the Prudential Life Insurance Company, described an encounter with Frey the day before he died. When Frey pushed Dunning around while he was being given a ticket by another policeman for a minor violation on his car, Dunning had said to him, "What's the matter with you? You act like you're the Gestapo or something."
Really quick, TikTok, this is for educational purposes only. You guys hit me with 2 violations last time, and I understand language and context, but this is for educational purposes only. YouTube, the same thing. This is for educational purposes only. Please allow me to play this so people can understand the full context of the time, the situation, the scenario, so we can also incorporate what's going on today. Salute to everybody tapping in this afternoon. Peace, blessings, positivity. Let's keep this a safe space. And like I said, guys, I am streaming on YouTube. So if you guys missed anything or missed the last segment, you guys can actually go back and watch it and keep up and, you know, use it as a little library log. But salute to everybody. Let's get to it.
Frey's hand went to his revolver. "I am the Gestapo," he said. A young white school teacher, Bruce Bison, who had taught Frey in high school, invited him to come back and speak to the class about his work as a policeman. While he was talking to the high school students, Bison testified Frey referred to people in the black community as niggers and spoke disparagingly of them as criminals and lawbreakers.
F1, F1.
Gary wanted the jury to understand what black people are subjected to by cops like Frey, hung up on power. He also wanted them to realize that Frey's bloodthirstiness was responsible for his own death. Belford Dunning, the insurance man, had said to him the day before he died, "Man, if you don't lick this, you are not going to last very long around here." As a matter of fact, Frey's superiors had already decided to move him out of the black community into another area where he would be less of a lethal threat to innocent human beings. But they were too late, and Frey himself fulfilled Dunning's prophecy. Gary stressed this aspect of Frey's behavior, and by implication, most other policemen, over and over again during his defense.
F1 is used to be able to shake up the algorithm in the comments so that way we'll be able to protect the live. So if you hear anybody or see anybody put F1 in the comments, just participate. Throw the F1s. Just, you know, you hear anything explicit or anything that you know TikTok will violate or YouTube will violate, just throw the F1s in the comments.
Only a bully to helpless people, he was also determined to exterminate anyone whom he considered a threat to his own dubious masculinity. "You know," Gary said to the jury during his summation, "since the day I got into this case, one thing has bothered me. Why in tarnation was Officer Frey so headstrong in stopping Huey Newton's automobile? I wake up at night trying to find an answer to that, and I can't find an answer. This bothers me. It is just not part of legal due process. It is not part of any understanding of justice. It is not part of any understanding of the proper administration of the law. Frankly, it is not the type of police action that I have personally witnessed, but then again, I am not a black man.
Thanks for the gifts.
I am not a Black Panther. I am part of accepted society. I don't think any officer would stop me unless I was actually openly, overtly violating the law." What was Huey Newton doing when he was driving down 7th Street between 4:50 and 5 o'clock in the morning that warranted this officer to call in and ask for PIN, Police Intelligence Network, information saying, "I got a Black Panther car, see if there is something on it"? In my opening statement, I told you that there was a plan, a concerted plan by the Oakland Police Department, together with other police departments in Alameda County, to get Huey Newton.
Yo, really quick, everybody, if you guys could do me a favor, if you like the content and you're here for a little while, just do me a favor, jump over to YouTube and hit subscribe. So just in case I get clipped on TikTok, because I've been hit with a couple violations, especially through this book because of the context and the language, just do me a favor so you don't miss out on anything and you can catch the prior episodes on YouTube. Go subscribe over there, because if I get clipped over here, I'm not going to stop the live. I'm going to continue on YouTube. So salute to everybody. Peace, blessings, positivity. Let's keep it going. It's AfroTaino 88. The same way it is here on TikTok, it is on YouTube.
The Black Panther Party. Huey Newton above all. Another thing that bothers me, and bothers me very, very much about the evidence, and it should bother you when you start analyzing it. If it is true that Officer Frey intended to arrest Huey Newton and in fact said, "I now place you under arrest," which we contend is not so, but let's assume for the sake of argument that he did, I don't understand why he didn't put handcuffs on him, since the Panthers are supposed to be such desperados. I further don't understand, if he was placing him under arrest, why he passed his own automobile. I don't understand why Officer Frey took Mr. Newton to the third automobile, to the back end of it. Why? Was he going to beat him up? You know he could very well do it. He was a heavier man weighing 200 pounds. He went to the gym regularly, according to Officer Haynes. Huey is a 165-pounder, and Huey had a law book in his hand. Perhaps the most significant comment that can be made about the testimony of these defense witnesses from the black community is that Jensen offered no rebuttal. His silence was eloquent. I guess no one could be found to speak well of Frey. What can you say about a policeman who owned 3 guns, carried extra ammunition on his cartridge belt, and was the only member of the Oakland force who did not use the regular bullets issued by the department, but spent his own money to buy a special high-velocity type?
Listen.
On August 24, Charles Gary called Gene McKinney to the witness stand. When McKinney entered the courtroom that afternoon with his lawyer, Harold Perry, a feeling of excitement and expectation could be felt among the spectators. Here was one of the most important witnesses to the shooting of Haynes and Frey. Up until then, there had been considerable speculation about whether even the defense lawyers knew the name of my companion that morning. Throughout the trial, reporters and newsmen had been asking Charles Gary whether the mysterious witness would testify. When McKinney took the stand, Gary rose and asked him first his name and then whether he had been a passenger in the Volkswagen with me at the corner of 7th and Willow on the morning of October 28, 1967. Yes, I was, McKinney answered. His response electrified the courtroom. But those 2 questions were the only ones he ever answered. When Gary asked, "Now, Mr. McKinney, at the time and place on that morning, at approximately 5 o'clock in the morning, did you by chance or otherwise shoot at Officer John Frey?" McKinney said, "I refuse to answer on the grounds it may tend to incriminate me." Jensen was outraged. He jumped to his feet and demanded that Judge Friedman direct the witness to answer. "Inasmuch as he has already started to testify," said Jensen, "saying he was there at the scene, he has obviously waived his right to silence. Let's hear him tell what he knows. He said he was there, and I ask that that question now be read to him and the court direct him to answer." Then followed a discussion between the prosecutor, Perry, and the judge about McKinney's constitutional rights, with Perry claiming McKinney need only be cross-examined on the 2 questions he had chosen to respond to, his name and where he was on October 28. Beyond that, Perry claimed, he was entirely within his rights to claim the Fifth Amendment. When Jensen insisted on cross-examining him, McKinney refused to answer. Here, Gary was trying to raise the question of reasonable doubt about whether there could have been only one possible person who did the shooting, me, as the prosecution claimed. But Gary and Harold Perry were also using another brilliant strategy, and Jensen understood immediately what was involved. The prosecution believed that McKinney was inviting Judge Friedman to grant him immunity in his testimony, the same immunity he had given to Del Ross, whereby nothing he said could be used against him. Then, with this protection, he could say that he had killed Frey and shot at Haynes, and that he had escaped with me.
Listen.
Because no evidence had been submitted during the trial to prove otherwise, he could not have been convicted of perjury. Thus, having absolved me of the crime and having freed himself of any danger of prosecution, since his testimony could not be used against him, both of us could have walked out of the courtroom at liberty. But Jensen and Friedman, believing this to be the strategy, were having none of it. After questioning McKinney carefully to make sure he realized he was liable for contempt. Judge Friedman ordered him immediately sent to jail for refusing to testify. He later sentenced him to 6 months, but the California Superior Court reversed the decision, stating that McKinney had acted within his constitutional rights. After spending a few weeks in the county jail, McKinney was released on bail. As I said, he is a courageous man. Finally, on the morning of August 22nd, I took the witness stand. A number of people had doubted I would testify because they thought I would not be able to handle a merciless cross-examination by Jensen. But actually, I looked forward to it. For 6 weeks, I had sat beside Charles Gary in the courtroom and listened to Jensen claim that I had murdered Frey in cold blood. I had watched him try to sell the jury on the fact that I loved violence, that I had a history of provoking policemen, and that there was reason to believe I did not tell the truth. I wanted to set the record straight and prove to the jury that I was innocent.
Listen.
I also was determined to let him know what it meant to be a black man in America and why it had been necessary to form an organization like the Black Panther Party. After that, I hoped they would understand why Frey had illegally stopped my car on the morning of October 28. Gary opened up by asking me the 2 all-important questions: whether I had killed Officer John Frey, and whether I had shot and wounded Officer Herbert Keynes. I gave the only possible answers, the truth. No, I had not. After that, we went through the necessary background leading up to the incident, which in this case began the day I was born. I told the court about my family, about growing up in Oakland, where there was no place to play except in the rubble and garbage-strewn streets and vacant lots, because black kids have no swimming pools, no parks, no playgrounds. I told them about degrading experiences in the public school system.
Let's tap the screen, tap the screen.
Countless thousands of other black children have endured and continued to endure in an oppressive and indifferent world. I told them how the black community is occupied by police who need no excuse to harass and bully its inhabitants.
Nope.
I told them that when I graduated from Oakland Technical High School, I was unable to read or write, and that most of my classmates were in the same boat because no one in the school system cared whether we learned to read or write.
Listen up.
Then I told how, under the influence of my brother Melvin, I had taught myself to read by going again and again through Plato's Republic. I tried to explain what a deep impression Plato's allegory of the cave had made on me, and how the prisoners in that cave were a symbol of the black man's predicament in this country. It was a seminal experience in my life, I explained, for it had started me thinking and reading and trying to find a way to liberate black people. Then I told of meeting Bobby Seale at Oakland City College and how the Black Panther Party grew out of our talks. Gary led me through an exposition of what the Black Panther Party stood for and an explication of its 10-point program. I recited the 10 points in the courtroom and explained them. Blacks, I said, are a colonized people used only for the benefit and profit of the power structure whenever it suits their purposes.
You listen, salute to everybody, peace, blessings, positivity to everybody. If you haven't been here in a while, listen, it's appreciated that you're here now. But just to throw it out there, I don't know if you guys know, we are also live on YouTube. So if you missed anything and you want to go back and recap some of the books we started, the last book we started on YouTube, the first and the last book we did was War Against All Puerto Ricans by Nelson Dennis. And now we're going over the Huey P. Newton Reader. So every time I go live on TikTok, you guys can also find it on YouTube. Same name, AfroTaino 88. And you can go catch up with all the books, all the content, my little inputs and inserts, and even sometimes maybe even bringing people up here. So if you guys want to go check it out, like I said, we're live on YouTube right now, so you guys can go check it out and go check the previous chapters, so that way you don't feel lost in the source. You heard?
War, blacks were kicked off plantations and had nowhere to go. For nearly 100 years, they were either unemployed or used for the most menial tasks, because industry preferred to use the labor of more acceptable immigrants, the Irish, the Italians, and the Jews.
Listen.
However, when World War II started, blacks were again employed in factories and by industry, because with the white male population off fighting, there was a labor shortage. But when that war ended, blacks were once again kicked off the plantation and left stranded with no place to go in an industrial society. Growing up in the late 40s, I was aware of it in Oakland because major defense plants had been built there during the war, and a large black population was condemned to unemployment after the war. I quoted the second point in our program as
Yeah, but you know what? Just to throw it in there, we have to understand the geopolitical, agreements that happen after the wars, right? Us giving contracts to other nations to help build their economy and rebuild, the things that we may have participated in destroying, like giving Japan certain contracts, giving China certain contracts, trying to rebuild, but have a stronghold in their nations for us to be able to have that military stronghold on the world. That's what makes the United States, right? It's that military strength and superiority. So I think we have to also understand that, because that leads into the stigma of what everybody talks about. Oh, migrants are coming to steal jobs. No, the U.S. government gave away our jobs a very long time ago. A lot of the manufacturing, the warehousing, the producing, the industrial industry, the motor industrial, and a lot of that went bye-bye. But that's, again, we gave something to receive something. At whose expense? The people. But tap that screen, share this live, everybody.
changing all this. We want full employment for our people. We believe that the federal government is responsible and obligated to give every man employment or a guaranteed income. We believe that if the white American businessman will not give full employment, then the means of production should be taken from the businessman and placed in the community so that the people of the community can organize and employ all of its people and give a high standard of living.
But I agree to a lot of what's being said, right? But we're not taking into facts that a lot of U.S. corporations gain most of their capital on foreign soil. That's the key point of what today's dynamic is. U.S. corporations gain most of their profit in foreign soil. And like I said, I understand where I'm not combating. I'm just throwing modernized nuance into the situation.
Sometimes, while I was explaining black history and the aims of the Black Panther Party to the court, I forgot that I was on trial for my life. The subjects were so real and important to me that I would get lost in what I was saying. There were moments when I even enjoyed myself, especially when I had a chance to score points against Judge Friedman and Jensen. On one occasion, I saw an opportunity to show my contempt for the judge, and I took it. I was describing how some immigrant groups had been subjected to oppression and discrimination when they first arrived in this country, but that after they began to make economic gains, some of them had joined their oppressors, even when the oppressors continued to discriminate against the immigrants' own people.
And that goes back to what we studied a couple of weeks ago, right? When we go to Harvest of Empire, understanding even like that terminology, Latino, to group everyone in the same category based off the basis of language is kind of hypocritical, because even within Latinidad, you still have a class and, a caste and class system built off the same principles that the United States is kind of built off in some sense. And again, each individual migrating into this country, whether you come from Europe, Latin America, or any part of this world, is based off incentives. So we got to look into that. Like I said, if you want to see a prime example, go look into the details of the growth and developments of the Cubans in Miami and how they was able to get that economic stronghold to be able to put them in position to be able to have more influence in politics. It's incentives. Again, I'm not disagreeing with what Huey's saying. I'm telling you the after effects 50 years later, 60 years later, because what he's saying is correct. But now I'm telling you the whys and the hows and the aftermath. That's all I'm saying. I'm throwing the nuance in it.
I used as an example Jews who joined the Elks Club, even though they know that this organization is racist and anti-Semitic. Judge Friedman had been the first Jew admitted to the Elks Club in Oakland, a fact that had been given a great deal of publicity. The Elks wanted it believed that they were no longer anti-Semitic, but everyone knew better. Another time, talking about contemporary racism in American society, I deliberately used the Mormon Church as one of the most blatant proponents of ethnic discrimination. Knowing that Jensen was a Mormon, I looked at him when I said this, instead of at the jury. He gave me a smirk, and I kept right on looking at him. He could say nothing in front of the jury, lest they learn the truth about him. Jensen often became impatient with the way Gary was conducting his examination of me, and frequently interrupted, but even he sometimes seemed interested in what I was saying. Throughout, however, those meaningful glances passed between Jensen and Judge Friedman, the judge asking for an objection and Jensen giving it to him. Friedman could hardly hide his disapproval of everything I was saying, and kept telling me to stick to the present and the incident itself. Then Gary would remind him that everything I said was relevant to the defense. Somehow, we managed to get in all the most important political aspects of the case, and that was what mattered most. Only when that was accomplished did I turn to my version of what had happened that morning. I described it exactly as it took place up until Frey shot me. After that, of course, I had passed out, so I could describe only those things I remembered and my hazy impressions of them. I had spent nearly the entire day on the stand when Gary turned me over to the enemy. For the first time in 8 weeks, Jensen and I were face to face. My sister Leola had told me of an incident that occurred at the beginning of the trial when she was standing on the courthouse steps watching one of the many demonstrations. Jensen, not knowing who she was standing near her, watching with an associate. She heard Jensen tell his friend that he meant to make me lose my temper before the jury. Then, he said, all the demonstrations on my behalf would be meaningless. So when he approached me that afternoon, I knew what to expect. He wanted me to explode rather than engage in a good debating session. I felt that the whole exchange would be nothing more than another debate. Only this time, the stakes were high. I had spent too much time on corners, in bars, and in the classroom debating very complex subjects to get upset with Jensen's probing. He was a worthy opponent, but I knew that once he began to push me, he was going to be surprised at my responses. He had a false impression of me and expected me to respond in a way I was incapable of doing. Throughout almost 2 days of cross-examination, we struggled to see whose approach would prevail, mine or his. And I felt that during almost all this time, I controlled the situation. In responding to Jensen, just as I had responded to Gary, I did not pull any punches about criticizing the system or its agents.
Right.
Though my life was at stake, I wanted to show my contempt. I sought to use their own apparatus to defy them, which was consistent with the revolutionary practices I have attempted to live by. Jensen's entire cross-examination, nearly every incident he brought up, was intended to demonstrate that I loved violence and guns, and that I was a personal threat and a menace to police officers merely trying to do their duty.
And that's the stigma that they put on the Black Panther Party. And even when you talk about it today, this is the reason why even when we talk about it in history class, they're not even mentioned during the civil rights movement. It's because they've been put that stigma like they're domestic terrorists and these wild gunslinging, hoodlums or whatever. Like, this is why even today, even amongst our community, a lot of people still have that propaganda embedded in their brain, not understanding the even reasoning why they carried arms and why they wanted to police their own communities and police the police. Like, it's nuanced. This is why I said people gotta do their own history, their own research, and stop just listening to what everybody says. Even for myself, don't take my word for face value. Do me a favor. Everything I say, go look it up. Then come teach me something. I'm not a teacher. I'm a student sharing information. That's all I'm doing. So again, I'm not in a position where I'm the end all be all, just like none of us are. So we got to understand, when somebody pitches something to us, 9 out of the 10 times, there's an agenda. Do I have an agenda? Yeah. My agenda is to be able to bring the information that's not given to my people, to my people. That's my agenda. Tap that screen, share this live, and don't forget, we're live on YouTube right now, so if I do get clipped on TikTok, you guys can continue watching here on YouTube. It's AfroTaino88, and YouTube, if you guys want to hop over to TikTok to be able to show some love and support, because all gifts and donations will be going to the Young Lords Back the Borinquen Project. We will be in Yabucoa, Puerto Rico from October 6th to the 15th, so if anybody wants to look up the Marcos Sanchez Community Center, they are a non-profit. We are going down there. We do have a GoFundMe, and this is our third time actually going to the Marcos Sanchez Community Center, and we're going to be going for the next couple of years, hopefully, if everything goes good. But tap the screen, share this live, let's keep it going.
He began by asking about our early patrols in the Oakland community, emphasizing for the benefit of the jury in insidious ways the fact that we had carried shotguns. He tried to imply that I would have preferred to carry a concealed pistol on these patrols, but that the terms of my probation did not allow this. He reinforced this suggestion by having me read a poem, Guns, Baby Guns, I had once written for the Black Panther newspaper, which was filled with symbols and metaphors that have a particular meaning for black people, but are utterly lost on most whites. In the poem, I had mentioned a P-38 revolver, and Jensen tried to suggest that this was the type of gun I had shot Frey with, and that my poem suggested I liked this gun and would use it if the occasion demanded. What is a P-38? He asked. It's an automatic pistol, I answered. Does it fire 9mm Luger cartridges? Was his next question. I explained to Jensen that I don't know much about handguns. I always preferred a shotgun and would never touch handguns while I was on probation. I explained to him that in this matter, as in all others, Black Panthers obey the law. At that, he asked me if I remembered an incident in Richmond in 1967.
And that's what a lot of people tend to overlook when studying the Black Panther. That's the number one thing that Huey wanted to make sure the Panthers did, was everything by the book and by the law, because he was trying to use the system against itself to be able to show the flaws, to be able to change society for the good. So yeah, it becomes more radicalized when you're tackling radical situations, especially like policing the community and the things that happen that comes with that. So there's a lot of things, but you have to look at the prime reason of what the Panthers' ideology stood for, was being able to use the system's flaws against them to be able to make a better system to live in society.
I had not obeyed the law when, as he put it, I got into a combat with Richmond police. He was referring to the time the police had lain.
And again, don't take my word for it, because it's not my interpretation. It's literally his words. We got two other parts we went to on YouTube. So if you guys missed anything, go listen to Huey speak about it himself. We're talking about the founder. We're talking about him and Bobby Seale. Okay? So when you have individuals give their interpretations of what they think these organizations represented, or what they think they stood for, or what they think they did, or go read some of their books. They tell you for themselves. It's easy. It's very simple.
For us until 5 a.m. outside a house where we were partying. I had taken an arrest that time in order to avoid combat after one young police officer had stepped on all the brothers' feet and another got me in a chokehold against a police car. I carefully explained the details to Jensen and the jury, and told how an all-white conservative jury at my trial in Richmond had believed the police version of what had taken place, as they always do, and sentenced me to 60 days on the county farm. I made sure the jury learned about the policeman's remark after viciously beating the brother. I have to go now, because I promised to take my wife and kids to church at 9. Then Jensen brought up the time the Black Panthers had responded to the little boy who ran into headquarters asking for help. The police had burst into his house when his father was away and were tearing up the place on some phony pretext of looking for a shotgun. We asked the police to leave because they had no search warrant, and in their rage, they had arrested me for wearing a dagger in a holster, accusing me of displaying a weapon in a rude and threatening fashion. While describing this incident, I really got the best of Jensen. He had been on my right when he first asked the question, and the jury on my left.
It doesn't say on Audible what chapter we're on right now, but the part we're on is the trial, the second part of his trial. So this is about an hour long chapter. We're about halfway through. Yesterday we went the last hour of yesterday's, no, not yesterday, the other day's live, because I didn't go live yesterday. The other day's live was the first portion of the beginning stages of his trial. So right now we're coming through the ending stages of his trial right now. So continue to tap the screen, share this live. Don't forget, guys, we're live on YouTube, so there is an archive for you guys just in case you missed anything. You can always go back and catch up and be able to be up to tune for what we're talking about and the stories that we're listening to. But let's keep it going.
He wanted me to...
Hold up. Salute to everybody on YouTube, because I got a couple of people over there watching, showing love, tapping the screen. You know, salute to you guys. I really appreciate the love and support. And again, a lot of books that I bring onto TikTok will ban me and put me on timeout. Thank you. They will ban me and put me on timeout. This is the purpose of me being dual live on YouTube, not only for you guys to have the archive, but also for you guys not to miss out on any of the content, just in case I get put on timeout for a week or two. So salute to everybody. Don't forget, jump on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and everybody on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like button.
Toward him. But I turned my back and began giving details of the incident to the jury, which took a while. Since he had asked the question about the incident, he could not interrupt my answer without looking stupid, so I seized the time and took the play away from him. The jury seemed fascinated with my description of the affair and was with me all the way. Jensen obviously got so disgusted with what was happening that he left his position near the clerk's desk and sat down looking very dejected, as I was later told. At any rate, I described the incident fully, leaned back, and turned to my right for Jensen's next question. He was no longer there. I was surprised at not seeing him where he had last been standing, so I said, "Where is he?" Then I saw him seated at the table, and I smiled at him and said, "Oh, there you are. I thought you had gone home." The courtroom broke up at this, and the judge admonished me. Much of Jensen's cross-examination had continual reference to official reports and documents, which he kept consulting while I was on the stand. Reading a report that is filed in some record system and stamped with an official seal of approval can be very impressive. The printed page somehow suggests that whatever is described represents the truth, that it faithfully describes what took place. And so, when Jensen brought up official police testimony of what had happened to me in the past, in arrests, in courts, in various trials, he thought he was offering the jury proof of my violent and crime-filled past. But, far from distressing or embarrassing me, every one of his challenges presented a chance to tell the jury what had really taken place and to describe them in the larger context of what life is like for Black people in this country. In this way, I was able to demonstrate how the police had harassed the Black Panthers and looked for every opportunity they could to arrest us and destroy our organization.
Take that opportunity.
To give Jensen credit, he did not miss very much. But I countered every piece of official evidence with an explanation that went beyond words on a page. And I think the jury came to understand that no official document ever contains the whole truth.
Nope.
Events are dictated by a number of mitigating circumstances and a whole system of values and customs that can never be conveyed in print. Jensen made another mistake by examining some of my speeches and writings and reading into them exhortations to violence. On this tack, he quickly got out of his depth. He did not understand the way language is used among blacks and often took literally what was meant symbolically. Every time he brought up something I had written or said that he thought sounded dangerous, I patiently explained what it meant in terms of organizing the Black community.
Metaphors.
In this way, I was able to describe to the jury the goals the party had for Black people. I had hoped to do this, to take the initiative from Jensen and develop certain political points in the courtroom.
Right.
It was surprising how often I succeeded. Finally, Jensen got around to the morning of October 28. He came meticulously prepared, armed with photographs and maps, to present his version of what had happened. Leading me carefully through the whole incident, He had me describe my every move and gesture. At one point, I was even asked to demonstrate with him how Frey had smeared me. He also chose to bring up an encounter that Bobby Seale and I had had with two policemen in 1966, because he believed the event related to the shooting of Officer Frey. As Jensen described this incident, I had gotten into a fight with a policeman and had tried to take his gun away from him. If Jensen had been able to prove this, he could have used it as a foreshadowing of what had happened in 1967 and as evidence that I had done the same thing with Frey. I do not know where he got his information, but I pointed out to the court that it was on record that one of the policemen who was hassling us in 1966 had admitted in court that he was drunk when he met Bobby and me. Jensen said, "Mr. Newton, isn't it a fact that you entered a plea of guilty to battery upon that police officer, the man in uniform?" I answered, "I accepted the deal that the district attorney's department offered." "I see. And you pled guilty to a battery on a policeman?" "I think it was simple assault." "Is that right? Mr. Newton, did you see anyone shoot John Frey?" "No." "Did you see anyone shoot Officer Haynes?" "No, I did not." "You have no explanation at all of how John Frey was killed?" "None whatsoever." "I have no further questions." With that, Jensen's cross-examination was completed. It had not gone according to his plan. I had never lost my cool. It was Jensen, in fact, who lost his. Gary was masterful in his closing arguments. A defense lawyer has to be good at that point, because the prosecution gives the closing argument first, and then has the last word after the defense has spoken.
Thank you for the gifts.
Gary reviewed the evidence, showing the holes and the discrepancies in the prosecution testimony. He had brought a number of large posters into court with Greer's conflicting testimony lined up side by side, and with a pointer, he painstakingly indicated all the contradictions in Greer's two sworn statements. The whole thrust of Gary's summing up was to illustrate how much of a reasonable doubt there was in the evidence presented by the prosecution. But Gary did more than this. In a moving and heartfelt closing speech, he addressed himself to the conscience of the jury and to their understanding of social conditions that had led to the death of Officer Frey. The black community today, the black ghetto, is fighting for the right of survival. The white community is sitting smug and saying, "Let's have more police, let's have more guns, let's arm ourselves against the blacks." That is not the answer. If you think that is the answer, we are all destroyed. If you think that Mayor Daley has the answer, we are all destroyed. If you think that this nation, with all of its power and all of its strength, can eliminate violence on the street with more violence, they have another thought coming.
Facts.
My client and his party are not for destruction. They want to build. They want a better America for black people. They want the police out of their neighborhoods. They want them off their streets. Every one of you here possibly knows a policeman in your neighborhood. I know several men in police departments. I think they are wonderful people. I live in Daly City. I have a beautiful relationship with them. Those people live in my neighborhood, within 3 or 4 blocks. I know where one of them lives. I can call on him if I need him. But no police officer lives in the ghetto. Why don't they live in the ghetto? Because a man that is making $8 or $9 or $10,000 isn't going to live in the kind of hovel that the ghetto is. Has anybody thought of uplifting the ghetto so that it doesn't exist in the manner that it has? These are the things that Huey Newton and the Black Panthers and other people are trying to do. White America, listen. White America, listen. The answer is not to put Huey Newton in the gas chamber. It is not the answer to put Huey Newton and his organization into jail. The answer is to wipe out the ghetto, the conditions of the ghetto, so that black brothers and sisters can live with dignity, so that they can walk down the street with dignity. The fire and eloquence of Charles Gary's final argument are difficult to describe. He was pleading for the principles and beliefs he feels most deeply about and to which he has dedicated his entire life.
Facts.
When he stood and spoke out for justice and truth and tolerance, he was not simply defending a man whose life was in jeopardy. He was speaking for all the downtrodden and oppressed in the world, and he was asking the jury to think about them also. Few people in the courtroom that day were unaffected by what he said. In contrast, Jensen devoted most of his closing arguments to the particulars of the trial. He asked the jury to find me guilty of murdering John Frey and defended in detail the testimony of Greer and Heens. Yet at a point in Jensen's summation in which he discussed the meaning of law and the process of justice, the words could very well have been spoken by Gary. It was what my lawyers and I had been fighting for. But I feel sure Jensen had no idea of the irony in his remarks. We put together in the courtroom the notion that every right that goes to every citizen is implemented in our courts. I think that is so, and I think you should reflect on this. The notion that society accords a right to an individual has something that goes along with it, and that is that there is no such thing as a right without a duty that goes along with it. That is, if the law says a man has a right, the law also says that every other person must honor that right. He has a duty to honor that right. What is more fundamental, ladies and gentlemen, than the right to life? What is more fundamental than the right to a peaceful occupation and life? What we do in a courtroom is to seek out and declare a truth. We must, as I say, declare those truths in a courtroom. If we cannot declare those truths in a courtroom, we are lost. And in a courtroom, just as there must be a duty to implement a right, a courtroom must exist on the basis of the declaration of truth. With Jensen's final declaration that I was a murderer, the arguments were finished. The struggle between defense and prosecution was over, and the judge began to instruct the jury about what they must do to reach a verdict. The function of the jury, said Judge Friedman, is to determine the issues of fact that are presented by the allegations of the indictment filed in this court and the defendant's plea of not guilty. This duty you should perform uninfluenced by pity for a defendant or by passion or prejudice against him. You must not suffer yourselves to be biased against a defendant because of the fact that he had been arrested for these offenses, or because an indictment has been filed against him, or because he has been brought before this court to stand trial. None of these facts is evidence of his guilt, and you are not permitted to infer or speculate from any or all of them that he is more likely to be guilty than innocent. As the jury filed out, led by David Harper, I felt everything was over for me. Some jurors had been impressed with my testimony and believed in me. I had watched them throughout the trial and felt they were sympathetic to the defense. But I had no hope of their steadfastness under the pressure of jury deliberations. Often in such circumstances, people will appear to lean one way but change their minds when conflicting opinions bear down on them. So I went back to my cell prepared for a decision that would send me to the gas chamber. My work had prepared me well. Organizing defense groups in the community had continually made me aware that I could be killed at any time, and I knew that when serious actions begin to go down against you, you must be ready. If you wait to prepare for death when the gas chamber is facing you, it is too late.
Facts.
It is the difference between having your raft ready when high tide comes or trying to make it after the waves are there. When death is staring you in the face, the heavy things take over. The jury deliberated for 4 days, from September 5th until September 8th. And despite the fact that my lawyers were with me constantly, the time passed very slowly. Nonetheless, I was in good spirits. My thoughts kept me occupied. I re-examined everything that I had done before and during the trial, and found nothing to regret, nothing I had to square myself with. Our activities as Black Panthers had been worth all the trouble and pain we had seen, and there was no reason to feel we were losing everything. If I had had a chance to start again, nothing would have been any different. I contemplated the gas chamber. Only two thoughts concerned me: how the last minute would be, and how it would affect my family. First of all, I resolved to face it with dignity right to the end. Second, I worried about my family having to live through yet another ordeal. The whole experience had been terrible for them. Yet I knew that if necessary, I would do it again, even though it meant more suffering for them. I felt great love for them and valued their support. If I had caused them anguish, I was sustained by the knowledge that one day the people would have the victory, and that this would bring some measure of satisfaction to those I loved. Many people wondered what the Black Panthers would do when the verdict came down. The brothers had repeatedly said that the sky was the limit if the oppressor did not free me. At the time that was said, we meant that an unfavorable decision would be taken to the highest judicial level. But the statement was intentionally ambiguous and open to interpretation in order to put the whole Oakland power structure uptight. That plan certainly worked. An open interpretation not only attracted considerable publicity, but also left us free to make specific decisions about action after the verdict was in, rather than before. It was in the early evening of September 5th, the first day of the jury's deliberations, that we were notified that the jury was returning to the courtroom. At first we thought they had reached a verdict, but no. They wanted to have Greer's statement to McConnell read to them again, and they also asked if they could see my bullet wound. When everyone was assembled, I went over to the jury box, lifted up my sweater to show the scar in my abdomen, and then turned around to show the exit wound. Later we found out that a disagreement had arisen among the jury members over the location of the wound. If Haynes's testimony were true, he testified that he was in a kneeling position and I was in a standing position. The wound near my navel would be lower than the exit wound in my back. But if Frey had stood and shot me while I was in a kneeling position, the navel wound would be higher than the rear exit wound. I had testified that Frey had shot me as I fell to my knees. My demonstration supported my testimony. It was also during the jury's first day of deliberations that Gary found the mistake in Greer's testimony left uncorrected by Jensen. The jury had asked to see the transcript again, but when Gary discovered the error, he refused to allow the uncorrected copy to be sent in. Judge Friedman commented that he did not think the error made much difference, but Gary knew better. It was a vital correction as far as the defense was concerned, a mistake so serious that it could mean a new trial. Gary insisted that he and Jensen listen to the original tape, find out whether the word really was didn't, and send the correction in to the jury.
Listen.
Jensen at first claimed that his office did not have the proper machine to play the original tape. That evening, one of my lawyers listened to a dub of the original on his own machine and swore the word was didn't. Jensen did not listen to the tape until the next morning. It was a tense period for all of us, since the jury could have come in with a verdict at any moment. On Friday, September 5th, my attorneys played the original tape in the press room for reporters and representatives of the media. Most of them thought the word was didn't, and the news on television, radio, and in the press that day carried stories about this new discovery. Meanwhile, my attorneys went to an audio engineer who worked for a radio station in Oakland.
Listen.
He agreed to transfer the crucial part of Greer's testimony to another tape and then blow it up on his own hi-fi equipment so that they could hear the correct word distinctly and once and for all. When this was done, the word Greer actually had said, didn't, came through loud and clear. Meanwhile, the defense was working frantically against me, preparing a motion to reopen the case and trying to get the proper equipment into court to play the blown-up tape for Judge Friedman and Jensen. It was a real hassle, but in the end, over the vigorous objections of Jensen, who claimed it was too late and that Gary should have done this during the trial, the judge did listen to the blown-up tape and had to recognize that the word was didn't. A corrected statement was sent in to the jury late Saturday afternoon, but Friedman would not allow any mention of the original error to accompany the transcript. We never learned whether the jury even noticed it, let alone understood how important and significant a correction it was. Finally, on the fourth day of deliberations, September 8, around 10 o'clock in the evening, the jury reached a verdict. I came back into the courtroom with my lawyers to hear it read by the clerk. Verdict of the jury.
Really quick, everybody, tap that screen, share this live. Tap this screen, share this live. If this is your first time here, I do believe in socialism, free education, free housing, and free healthcare. So by tapping the screen and sharing this live, it's just showing me a little bit of socialist love and support to be able to get the message out to the masses. And do me a favor, go hop over to YouTube, go type in AfroTaino 88, go hit subscribe, like, and go pop in. Show some love. We got to shake up both algorithms. I don't know how long TikTok is going to be around, and not for nothing, the books that I want to bring are a little bit more mature, with mature language and mature content. So you guys are going to have to switch over to YouTube eventually if you want to keep up with the content. Salute to everybody. Tap the screen. Share this live. Let's get it.
The jury in the above entitled cause finds the above named defendant Huey P. Newton guilty of a felony, to wit, voluntary manslaughter, a violation of Section 192, Subdivision 1 of the Penal Code of the State of California, a lesser and included offense within the offense charged in the first count of the indictment. David B. Harper, Foreman. The next verdict, with the title of the court and cause the same. We, the jury in the above entitled cause, finds the above named defendant Huey P. Newton not guilty of a felony, to wit, assault with a deadly weapon upon a police officer, a violation of Section 245B of the Penal Code of the State of California, as charged in the second count of the indictment. David B. Harper, Foreman. The following verdict, with the title of the court and cause the same. We, the jury in the above entitled cause, find that the charge of previous conviction as set forth in the indictment is true. David B. Harper, Foreman. Manslaughter, not murder. That was a surprise. But Gary and I were unhappy with such an equivocal decision. It meant the jury believed I had killed Officer Frey, but only after severe provocation and in a state of passion. It was absurd, however, that they did not think I had also shot Officer Haynes. Did the jury think someone else had shot him? And if so, who? And how did the two shootings connect? The verdict was a compromise that showed no justice at all, for there was clearly a reasonable doubt about my guilt in the minds of some jurors, although they failed to bring about my exoneration.
I'm low-key curious to see what's really in the FBI files on that situation and scenario. I really, because like he said, he's curious about a couple of things about the trial and all of that, and why it went the way that it went, right? I'm really curious of what was in those FBI files, or what the FBI, documented that's left out of this trial, and what happened, and the effects of what the outcome was.
These questions began to surface when I realized that although I would have to go to jail, I had escaped the gas chamber.
Facts.
Some people thought the verdict was better than a hung jury and a mistrial. The state could not try me again for first-degree murder.
That's facts.
But I disagreed with them. The verdict caused a lot of dissatisfaction in the black community. Some people were particularly angry at David Harper, the jury foreman, who to them had sold out in typical Uncle Tom fashion. I did not think so. To counteract this opinion, I sent out a message to the community shortly after I had a chance to analyze the verdict. This, in part, was my statement.
I'm pretty sure, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm pretty sure a lot of these documents are available for us. we just have to pay for them. The Freedom of Information Act, especially after a certain amount of years, a lot of these records are available. You just, again, capitalism, right? You have to pay the government for them to be able to tell you what they did and to be able to release those files. That's why the last book we did, War Against All Puerto Ricans, was important, is because the books, most of the research for the book came through the COINTELPRO Los Carpetas that the FBI had acquired during, everything that they was doing in Puerto Rico. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's out. That's why I said I'm curious. Now I just don't know if I want to spend the money right now, to go throw in the Freedom of Information Act and see what's out there. But, oh, listen, BGP, if you can go Google it, let us know. Let us know. And a matter of fact, as this playing, I'm gonna show a book that I just picked up, which kind of leads into like that whole COINTELPRO or FBI files and all of that. But I'm gonna let this play. Again, it's a book that has nothing to do with this book. Well, sorta, kinda. Well, you'll get it.
The question has been asked, what do I think of the verdict of the jury? I think the verdict reflected the racism that exists here in America, and that all...
Really quick. The mic is connected. The problem is we're dual live on TikTok and YouTube. So the mic is connected to YouTube and not TikTok, because that's where the audio is going to be recorded and documented for the little library that I'm trying to put on for the Audible. So you guys will be able to catch every live that I do on TikTok, whether you catch it live or you catch it later on, so that way you can be able to keep up with some of the books that we're doing. So now you good. I know it looks weird, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are like, damn, why he sounds like that? It's because it's connected to YouTube, guys. I'm sorry.
People are subjected to. Some specific things I would like to say about certain people on the jury. First, Brother Harper and other members of the jury who believed in my innocence owed an obligation to me and the black community to adhere to their convictions that I was not guilty. I am sure that they, the people on the jury, who agreed with Brother Harper, a strong man and also jury foreman, were in the minority. I believe that Brother Harper was interested in doing the best thing for my welfare. I think that the verdict was a compromise verdict. A compromise between a first-degree murder and an acquittal or not guilty. Why did Brother Harper compromise? He compromised because he truly believed that it was in my best interest. Mr. Harper made his decision based on the assumption that if a hung jury resulted, I would be tried in the next trial by an all-white jury and possibly convicted of first-degree murder. I believe that he based his action or his decision upon the fact that he saw how racist the majority of the jury was acting.
Yeah, so I picked up this book the other day, the James Baldwin FBI files. This is really dope. I'm gonna try to see. You can see how many files is actually in here, like the whole book. And I know I'm holding it awkward, but I'm trying to scan through it to kind of show you guys. There's a lot of documented, blacked out things. Again, this book is pretty dope. I picked it up in the city the other day. I was downtown and I walked into a bookstore, and they had a little wall just for James Baldwin, and that one caught my eye, and I was like, ooh, this one's nice. So what inspired me to do is now I gotta go get me the Malcolm X FBI files, which they also have that one as well. So that's what I'm actually gonna start doing. I'm gonna actually start looking up some of our revolutionaries and some of our activists who have books out there with photos and imagery and chapters about each files that were written down. So, but let's get back into the book, because I don't want to get sidetracked. Salute to everybody. Don't forget, go check me out on YouTube, guys.
Attitude toward the case. I believe that there were few people joining Brother Harper and his just conclusion that I was innocent and that I am innocent, but he did compromise. Because Harper failed to persuade the jury, or he felt that he could not persuade them or show them the truth or the fact that I was innocent, he thought that he would then give the lowest possible sentence. He might have considered that I had been in jail for the last 10 months, and that I might be in jail for another 10 months, awaiting a new trial, and then stand the possibility of having the first-degree murder conviction stand, simply because of the racism that exists here in America. These are all my speculations, and I will tell you why I speculate on these things later on while I have this conversation with you. Brother Harper, like many people, believes that on a manslaughter charge, you would spend maybe 2 years or 3 years at the most in the state penitentiary, and further, that due to the fact that I have already been in jail for 1 year, that while waiting trial another year as a result of a hung jury, I would already serve that time and even more. So, therefore, because he couldn't get an acquittal, he then chose to compromise and get the lowest sentence. The only problem with that, though, is that in a political case, the defendant is subject to do the maximum length of time. The sentence on a manslaughter charge with a prior felony conviction is from 2 to 15 years. But I don't believe that Brother Harper had any idea of what he was doing, so therefore, I want to ask the Black community sincerely and Brother Harper's son to forgive not only him, but also the other people who believed in my innocence and who were compromising because they did not know what they were doing. I believe that they thought they were doing the best thing in my interest and the best thing in the interest of the Black community under the racist circumstances wherein which they had to operate. Even though he was unknowingly operating against it, he felt that he was acting in the capacity of one who loves the community. Therefore, I am asking the community that in the event that he teaches at Oakland City College next semester, that he be given all respect due to a Black man, because he did not know what he was compromising to. I am very sure that we will get a new trial, not because of the kindness that the appellate courts will show us, but because of the political pressure that we have applied to the establishment.
Listen.
And we will do this by organizing the community so that they can display their will. The will of the Black people must be done. And I would like to compliment the people on the revolutionary fervor that they have shown thus far. They have been very beautiful, and they have exceeded my expectations.
Tap that screen, tap
Let
that
us
screen.
go on outdoing ourselves. A revolutionary man always transcends himself, or otherwise, he is not a revolutionary man. So we always do what we ask of ourselves, or more than what we know we can do. At this time, I would like to admonish my revolutionary brothers and sisters to use restraint, and that we would not show violent eruption at this time, for the reason that the establishment would like to see violence occur in the community in order to have an excuse to send in 2,000 or 8,000 troops. The mayor has already stated that he would be very happy if something were to happen in the community while the establishment is in a favorable situation. They would like to wipe the community out. It is up to the vanguard party to protect the community and teach the community to protect itself. And therefore, at this time, we should admonish the community to use restraint and not to open ourselves for destruction.
I'm gonna, kind of say what he's saying, not be as reactionary and actually put some thought into our actions, so that way we don't make a lot of the similar mistakes that a lot of our elders and ancestors have made in the past because of being reactionary.
I cautioned restraint to the people because I knew the police were eager for a chance to kill Black people indiscriminately.
And that's what I tell people. It's about maximum damage, minimum loss of life. We've lost enough people in our family, in our ancestors, in our lineage. We've lost a lot. We've lost land. So if we continue just to do things without having a purpose, without having a proper structure, without actually coming together and actually putting our differences aside, we're gonna crash out. We're gonna crash out.
They had been waiting a long time for this day, and an angry eruption by the community would have given them the excuse they needed. The community responded to my request and stayed cool. Any spontaneous and unorganized outburst would have caused great suffering. With everything quiet the night after the decision came down, the police felt cheated. They wanted some action, and that meant killing Blacks. Unable to find any provocation, two drunken colleagues of Frey created one. They drove in their police cars to our office on Grove Street and fired a shattering volley of bullets into the front window. Then they went to the corner, turned around, and came back, shooting into the office again. By this time, some citizens had called police headquarters, and the two policemen were apprehended. Fortunately for us, the office was purposely empty, and no one in the streets or the buildings nearby was hit by the bullets. But if Black Panthers had been in the office, the police probably would have claimed that we had fired on them first and then tried to wipe us out. This time, however, they could not hide their treachery behind their usual lie, justifiable homicide. The true nature of their...
Just speaking on what he's saying, right? That's not a hypothetical. If we don't study history and understand that time and everything that was going on, if that's not true, this wouldn't have happened. The assassination of Fred Hampton wouldn't have happened if what he's saying is not true. Because that is the reality. And that's the exact story that they pitch when they assassinated Fred Hampton in his sleep. I'm just saying, guys, tap that screen, share this live.
An unprovoked and unjustified attack on our office had been exposed before the community. The two policemen were eventually dismissed from the force, but they were never brought to trial for breaking the law. But the incident should also help make it clear to doubters that I was in fact innocent. Just as Frey's two colleagues felt free to go in search of black people to kill, so too did Frey in the early morning hours of October 28, 1967. There are many who do not believe that a police officer, without provocation or danger, would draw his service revolver and fire upon a citizen. But that morning, Frey had murder on his mind. Charles Gary summed it all up when he told the jury that the black community is in constant danger from the violence of the police. I wonder how many people are going to die before we recognize the brotherhood of man. I wonder how many more people are going to die before the police departments of our nation, the mayors of our nation, the leaders of our nation recognize that you can't have a society that is 66% white racists, ignoring the role of the black man, the brown man, the red man, and the yellow man. Officer Frey bothers me. His death bothers me, and the things that caused his death bother me. I can see this young man going through high school, varsity football, basketball, and all the other things that young men do in good physical condition. Joining the police department and without proper orientation, without proper attitudes, and without proper psychological training, and all the other training which is necessary to being a policeman. Being thrown into the ghetto. In a year's time, he becomes a rank and outright racist, to such a point that when he comes to class to talk about his success as a police officer, the school teacher has to cringe and grimace to let him know that the use of the word nigger was not appropriate. I just wonder how...
F1 in the comments, F1 in the comments, please.
More Officer Freys there are. His death bothers me, but Huey Newton is not responsible for his death. Part 2. The Greatest Threat. Following the opening months of...
Really quick, everybody tapping in with me and tapping in with us this afternoon. We are live on YouTube, so if I do get clipped or put on timeout, do me a favor, hop over to YouTube, AfroTaino 88. Go subscribe so that way you can continue to watch and keep in tune with even the previous lives that we've laid down in the last couple of days prior to this one. But salute to everybody. Tap the screen, share this live. Let's keep it going.
In the summer of 1968, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover issued his infamous pronouncement that the Black Panther Party was the greatest threat to the domestic security of the United States. Hoover's fear bore no relation to the nation's safety, of course, reflecting instead his own repressive concerns over the party's radicalizing influence on the political consciousness of the New Left and on African Americans in general. Between Huey's arrest in 1967 and his acquittal in 1970, the Black Panthers became the vanguard movement of the post-civil rights era. In response, a diverse coalition of activists, from the White Peace and Freedom Party to the Puerto Rican Young Lords, to the Gay Liberation Front to San Francisco Chinatown's Red Guard, rallied behind the party in answer to Huey's call for national solidarity against social injustice.
And to get into what's the next book gonna be, I've done it before on my platform since, like I said, we are archiving everything on YouTube at this point. We will be going over Young Lords of Radical History by Joanna Fernandez. That's going to be the next book we do right after this one. And then I'm gonna switch it up and go into other, intersectionalities of history and correlations and giving y'all the full scope of how history played out, not just a one perspective and a one narrative, side. But let's keep it going. Let's tap in. Let's keep tapping the screen and sharing this live.
FBI's most violent attacks on the Panthers were accordingly launched over this formative 4-year period, with 79% of all counterintelligence actions against African American political groups targeting the destruction of the Black Panther Party. This segment of the book offers a window into Huey's political and intellectual maturation during this volatile time. Beginning with defining texts such as In Defense of Self-Defense and The Correct Handling of a Revolution, we see how his preoccupation with African Americans and armed self-defense evolves to more inclusive discussions on topics beyond the Black liberation struggle, strictly speaking. Essays like On the Peace Movement and the women's and gay liberation movements attest to Huey's growing awareness of the necessity for uniting against a common enemy, as he later puts it. Although the Black Panthers remained fundamentally an African American liberation movement, the party's vision had grown to embrace all who struggled in social protest.
Yeah, I heard that, right? And need I remind y'all, these are Huey's words, the founder of the Panther Party.
Fear and Doubt, May 15, 1967. The lower socioeconomic black male is a man of confusion. He faces a hostile environment and is not sure that it is not his own sins that have attracted the hostilities of society. All his life, he has been taught, explicitly and implicitly, that he is an inferior approximation of humanity. As a man, he finds himself void of those things that bring respect and a feeling of worthiness. He looks around for something to blame for his situation, but because he is not sophisticated regarding the socio-economic milieu and because of negativistic parental and institutional teachings, he ultimately blames himself. When he was a child, his parents told him that they were not affluent because we didn't have the opportunity to become educated, or we did not take advantage of the educational opportunities that were offered to us. They tell their children that things will be different for them if they are educated and skilled, but there is absolutely nothing other than this occasional warning, and often not even this, to stimulate education. Black people are great workers.
Listen, growing up in the special education system, guys, like I spent most of my life in special education. And the problem was, and what I realized is not that I was incapable of learning, is that we all learn differently. And the way they teach you may not register to what you may need or may cater to how you learn and the way you process things. I don't process things the way an average individual process. I mean, that doesn't make me better or worse. It just saying that the way I receive the information and the way it sticks to me and how I retain it is different than the average individuals. That's why I said, for me, it sucks that it took me so long to even have the consciousness awareness and to be able to retain the type of information I'm able to retain at the moment. I just wished I would have gained it early. I'm happy that I know how to do it now, but it took me figuring out and wanting to do it on my own, right? When somebody's forced teaching you something that's not clicking, you turn to reject it. And this is why I tell people too, that even breaks down to like having conversations and shit with individuals. Like my mom always told me, and it's funny, right? That it's not what you say, it's how you say it that's really gonna determine if an individual is gonna receive what you're saying or reject it, regardless of what you're saying, regardless of it being factual, regardless if it being from the heart or not. It's what you say. I mean, it's how you say, not what you say. But let's keep going, guys. Let's tap into the screen because I don't want to get into no metaphoric shit right now. We digging deep into the Huey P Newton reader. And again, don't forget to show some support. Go subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on TikTok. All gifts and donations are going to the Young Lords Back to Board Inc. project. So every little gift we get will be going to the Marco Sanchez Community Center October 5th to the 16th. But let's keep it going.
Of education, even the lower socioeconomic black person, but at the same time, they are afraid of exposing themselves to it. They are afraid because they are vulnerable to having their fears verified. Perhaps they will find that they can't compete with white students. The black person tells himself that he could have done much more if he had really wanted to. The fact is, of course, that the assumed educational opportunities were never available to the lower socioeconomic black person due to the unique position assigned him in life. It is a two-headed monster that haunts this man. First, his attitude is that he lacks the innate ability to cope with the socioeconomic problems confronting him, and second,
which is relevant today, not just in the black community, but all people of color community today is still relevant.
Himself that he has the ability, but he simply has not felt strongly enough to try to acquire the skills needed to manipulate his environment.
And that comes from not seeing yourself in history, right? You know, if you don't see representation, or if you don't see yourself, you know, within, you know, historical concepts to prove that you and your people come from a lot greater circumstance or can be able to contribute and do these things. This is why they stress and they, you know, go out their ways to be able to remove our efforts from the contributions of histories, whether it's invention, businesses, or even, you know, the education or rebelling, you know, against the system. These are things that they suppress us in, so we don't be able to see ourselves doing those things. Because again, if we don't see ourselves doing those things, we have less ideas of it actually happening. I mean, that's just my input. I know I'm a little all over the place trying to get my words together, but I think you guys get what I'm saying.
A desperate effort to assume self-respect, he rationalizes that he is lethargic. In this way, he denies a possible lack of innate ability. If he openly attempts to discover his abilities, he and others may see him for what he is or is not, and this is the real fear. He then withdraws into the world of the invisible, but not without a struggle. He may attempt to make himself visible by processing his hair, acquiring a boss mop, or driving a long car even though he cannot afford it. He may father several illegitimate children by several different women in order to display his masculinity. But in the end, he realizes that his efforts have no real effect. Society responds to him as a thing, a beast, a non-entity, a something to be ignored or stepped on. He is asked to respect laws that do not respect him. He is asked to digest a code of ethics that acts upon him, but not for him. He is confused and in a constant state of rage, of shame, of doubt. This psychological state permeates all his interpersonal relationships. It determines his view of the social system. His psychological development has been prematurely arrested. This doubt begins at a very early age and continues throughout his life. The parents pass it on to the child, and the social system reinforces the fear, the shame, and the doubt. In the 3rd or 4th grade, he may find that he shares the classroom with white students, but when the class is engaged in reading exercises, all the black students find themselves in a group at a table reserved for slow readers. This may be quite an innocent effort on the part of the school system. The teacher may not realize that the black students feared, in fact, feel certain that black means dumb and white means smart. The children do not realize that the head start white children get at home is what accounts for the situation.
Yeah, this is why
it's generally accepted that
this is why I talk so much, especially through my lives, and even when I'm like critiquing certain things that I don't necessarily, you know, condone on TikTok, you know, the psychological aspect, right? there's a lot of things there's a lot of trauma we go through. There's a lot of things that we internalize that affects a lot of our decision makings, right? It gets to a point sometimes where psychologically, right, we've assimilated so much that we tend to even go to the lengths of doing some of the oppressive tactics to some of our own people that the oppressive has done. And I don't want to say our people become the oppressor, but in reality, that's kind of what it is. And these are different elements of the psychological warfare, right? To make you feel like you're nothing. If I take all representation of you and your people out of history, when you go to look up and to feel prideful, to, have an idea, like for me too, like my conscious awareness growing up and finding out who the young lords were was, trying to find out the contributions of Puerto Ricans. And I'm a New Yorican born and raised. So me looking for that is, I'm sitting here like, damn, we ain't contribute nothing. We didn't do nothing. And then as you dig in the crates and you start really digging and looking and you see the contributions, you see the intersectionalities, you see, representation being hidden from the people, you start getting a little frustrated, but it also wakes you up to say, oh shit, you could do this too. Like, this generation has that opportunity. Like, we're in history. Like, we set our stones. Like, we marked our ground. Like, we have to be able to take that. But this is why I say we have to be able to see our representation in history. And if you don't see representation, you're never going to feel inspired enough to actually believe that you can accomplish these things. At least not the masses. Some individuals have enough will to see through things. But the reality of what psychological assimilation has done, not to just individuals, but entire societies. Man, look, I just did a video on Anuel. He's supporting Trump. And again, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. But if you listen to these individuals, how we've assimilated, we just use our platform to be able to capitalize off certain situations. Because do you really think he gives a fuck about politics and U.S. politics? No. He cares about his dollar. And he's so indoctrinated that he believes that he benefits under Trump, when in reality, we're still under the same tax bracket. So if you complaining and whining now about, the economy and this, that, and the third, well, bro, why would you advocate for the same individual you're stuck under the same tax bracket under? Make it make sense. But that's a whole other story, because I'm sidebarding and I'm just rambling right now. Tap the screen, share this live. Let's keep it going. I'm gonna shut my ass up right now.
Father of the man. This holds true for the lower socioeconomic
Hey, thank
black
you.
With whom, with what, can he, a man, identify? As a child, he had no permanent male figure with whom to identify. As a man, he sees nothing in society with which he can identify as an extension of himself. His life is built on mistrust, shame, doubt, guilt, inferiority, role confusion, isolation, and despair. He feels that he is something less than a man, and it is evident in his conversation. The white man is the man. He got everything, and he knows everything, and a nigga ain't nothing. In a society where a man is valued according to occupation and material possessions, he is without possessions. He is unskilled and, more often than not, either marginally employed or unemployed. Often his wife, who is able to secure a job as a maid cleaning for white people, is the breadwinner. He is therefore viewed as quite worthless by his wife and children. He is ineffectual both in and out of the home. He cannot provide for or protect his family.
Oh man, what he's talking about right now. This part right here is when I was going through my journey. I had to start understanding, right? And again, I had to look at my family and just trying to find myself. My father passed away. I have a last name that's my father's, but his father was never in the picture, right? So even breaking that down, right, and understanding, even with someone like the family, Bochinche and all that, but understanding the time and the circumstances, of, and again, I'm not giving the I benditos to the men. I'm not saying that. I'm giving you, scenarios and things that happen within, society throughout history, and it's, the demasculating of the man throughout society, not being able to give them jobs, treating them like shit, not being able to provide, not doing all of these things, which leads into a psychological battle within the man, because he feels like he's being demasculated. And what that leads to, unfortunately, and again, I'm not proud of it, but it leads into a lot of alcoholism, which leads into a lot of domestic violence, which leads into a lot of broken families, which leads into a lot of shit that we had to deal with today. But these are the things that just happen, not within the Puerto Rican community, with the Mexican community, the Chicano community, the African American community. Yo, if you was here and you're a person of color and you was in the United States, you went through this shit. I'm just saying, like,
invisible, a non-entity. Society will not acknowledge him as a man. He is a consumer and not a producer. He is dependent upon the white man, the man, to feed his family, to give him a job, educate his children, serve as the model that he tries to emulate. He is dependent and he hates the man and he hates himself. Who is he? Is he a very old adolescent? Or is he the slave he used to be? What did he do to be so black and blue?
Again, guys, this is the psychological warfare. The psychological warfare is on all sides. This is just the perspective of Huey P. Newton telling you from a man's perspective. Again, the women go through it just as bad, even worse. So when you really understand the psyche and the treatment and all of these things that we go through as it's crazy, because we don't take that mental health into consideration today, understanding the things that we went through and our parents went through, and growing up in households that grew up with toxicity, without the proper mental health services that they need. These are things, no lie, and again, I might be over dramatizing things, but what leads to what a lot of what our mental health issues are today in our households and with our communities. And while we're so okay with being quiet about predatory things within our families, while we don't talk about our emotions, while we don't express how we feel, these are the fucking issue. This is the root cause of a lot of our self-destruction and community destruction when it comes to mental health. We don't talk about it enough. We don't preach it. Listen, everybody's so smart that they want to miss the key component that has a lot of us stressed the fuck out. And I know I went on a rant, but I go through it. I go through my own depression. I go through my own mental breakdowns. Why? Because I'm a product of my environment. My parents are a product of their environment, and their parents are a product of their environment. So every day I try to remind myself, you have to win the psychological war. It's not about the physical battle no more, because that comes with the success of the psyche. So if you can be able to overcome mentally, you'll be able to get over physically. A lot of us can't get over mentally, which we have no chance of getting over physically.
From In Defense of Self-Defense, 1. June 20, 1967. Men were not created in order to obey laws. Laws are created to obey men. They are established by men and should serve men. The laws and rules which officials inflict upon poor people prevent them from functioning harmoniously in society. There is no disagreement about this function of law in any circle. The disagreement arises from the question of which men laws are to serve. Such lawmakers ignore the fact that it is the duty of the poor and unrepresented to construct rules and laws that serve their interests better. Rewriting unjust laws is a basic human right and fundamental obligation.
Really quick, we got about 14 people here on TikTok right now at the moment. If you guys are not aware, we are dual streaming right now on YouTube and TikTok. So if you miss any of the prior context to this book or want to be able to catch up, you guys can go catch the previous episode and actually catch some of the other books that we've done and we're going to continue to do. So if you guys want to go over there, subscribe just in case TikTok puts me on TikTok timeout to be able to bring, these explicit books. Because again, I know they have adult language and adult content. But again, the algorithm on TikTok is a lot better than a lot of other platforms. I'm taking the chance. So if you guys want to go subscribe to YouTube, do me the favor, because I won't stop the stream and I won't stop the live even if I get put on timeout from TikTok.
Before 1776, America was a British colony. The British government had certain laws and rules that the colonized Americans rejected as not being in their best interests. In spite of the British conviction that Americans had no right to establish their own laws to promote the general welfare of the people living here in America, the colonized immigrant felt he had no choice but to raise the gun to defend his welfare. Simultaneously, He made certain laws to ensure his protection from external and internal aggressions from other governments and his own agencies. One such form of protection was the Declaration of Independence, which states, "Whenever any government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness." Now these same colonized white people, these bondsmen, paupers, and thieves, deny the colonized black man not only the right to abolish this oppressive system, but to even speak of abolishing it. Having carried this madness and cruelty to the four corners of the earth, there is now universal rebellion against their continued rule and power. But as long as the wheels of the imperialistic war machine are turning, there is no country that can defeat this monster of the West. It is our belief that the black people in America are the only people who can free the world, loosen the yoke of colonialism, and destroy the war machine. Black people who are within the machine can cause it to malfunction. They can, because of their intimacy with the mechanism, destroy the engine that is enslaving the world. America will not be able to fight every black country in the world and fight a civil war at the same time. It is militarily impossible to do both of these things at once. The slavery of blacks in this country provides the oil for the machinery of war that America uses to enslave the peoples of the world. Without this oil, the machinery cannot function. We are the driving shaft. We are in such a strategic position in this machinery that, once we become dislocated, the functioning of the remainder of the machinery breaks down. Penned up in the ghettos of America, surrounded by his factories and all the physical components of his economic system, we have been made into the wretched of the earth, relegated to the position of spectators, while the white racists run their international con game on the suffering peoples. We have been brainwashed to believe that we are powerless and that there is nothing we can do for ourselves to bring about a speedy liberation for our people. We have been taught that we must please our oppressors, that we are only 10% of the population, and therefore must confine our tactics to categories calculated not to disturb the sleep of our tormentors. The power structure inflicts pain and brutality upon the peoples and then provides controlled outlets for the pain in ways least likely to upset them or interfere with the process of exploitation. The people must repudiate the established channels as tricks and deceitful snares of the exploiting oppressors. The people must oppose everything the oppressor supports and support everything that he opposes. If black people go about their struggle for liberation in the way that the oppressor dictates and sponsors, then we will have degenerated to the level of groveling flunkies for the oppressor himself. When the oppressor makes a vicious attack against freedom fighters because of the way that such freedom fighters choose to go about their liberation, then we know we are moving in the direction of our liberation. The racist dog oppressors have no rights which oppressed black people are bound to respect. As long as the racist dogs pollute the earth with the evil of their actions, they do not deserve any respect at all, and the rules of their game, written in the people's blood, are beneath contempt. The oppressor must be harassed until his doom. He must have no peace by day or by night. The slaves have always outnumbered the slave masters. The power of the oppressor rests upon the submission of the people. When black people really unite and rise up in all their splendid millions, they will have the strength to smash injustice.
And again, this is 1967, guys. 1967.
Understand the power in our numbers. We are millions and millions of black people scattered across the continent and throughout the Western Hemisphere. There are more black people in America than the total population of many countries now enjoying full membership in the United Nations. They have power, and their power is based primarily on the fact that they are organized and united with each other. They are recognized by the powers of the world. We, with all our numbers, are recognized by no one. In fact, we do not even recognize our own selves. We are unaware of the potential power latent in our numbers. In 1967, in the midst of a hostile racist nation whose hidden racism is rising to the surface at a phenomenal speed, we are still so blind to our critical fight for our very survival that we are continuing to function in petty, futile ways. Divided, confused, fighting among ourselves. We are still in the elementary stage of throwing rocks, sticks, empty wine bottles, and beer cans at racist police who lie in wait for a chance to murder unarmed black people. The racist police have worked out a system for suppressing these spontaneous rebellions that flare up from the anger, frustration, and desperation of the masses of black people. We can no longer afford the dubious luxury of the terrible casualties wantonly inflicted upon us by the police during these rebellions. Black people must now move from the grassroots up through the perfumed circles of the black bourgeoisie to seize by any means necessary a proportionate share of the power vested and collected in the structure of America. We must organize and unite to combat by long resistance the brutal force used against us daily.
But do you see how he's using the concept by any means necessary, but also incorporating, right, maximum damage, minimum loss to life. He understands how detrimental it is to be able to put our people in a situation that's just going to be harmful instead of beneficial to the movement and what progress could and should be. We overlook this aspect of a lot of our revolutionary leaders. Why? Because we live in a mirage where we fantasize about the revolution and, glorify what we read, not understanding we take the real life situations out of what actually goes on and happens during that time and during those events. So if you really understand how much chaos, destruction, life is lost, and people who are hurt in the process of this movement, you would understand when reading a lot of our philosophers, they understand the concept of maximum damage, minimum loss to life. We got to come to that realization. That comes with growing up and not being as reactionary.
Power structure depends upon the use of force within retaliation. This is why they have made it a felony to teach guerrilla warfare. This is why they want the people unarmed. The racist dog oppressors fear the armed people. They fear most of all black people armed with weapons and the ideology of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And unarmed people are slaves or are subject to slavery at any given moment. If a government is not afraid of the people, it will arm the people against foreign aggression. Black people are held captive in the midst of their oppressors. There is a world of difference between 30 million unarmed, submissive black people and 30 million black people armed with freedom, guns, and the strategic methods of liberation. When a mechanic wants to fix a broken down car engine, he must have the necessary tools to do the job. When the people move for liberation, they must have the basic tool of liberation, the gun. Only with the power of the gun can the black masses halt the terror and brutality directed against them by the armed racist power structure.
And I'll be honest with you, that's where I give pushback to Huey P. Newton. And again, it's not based on the time. Was it necessary for the time? Was it detrimental for the time? Absolutely. But if you study every revolution from Simone Boulevard to the Black Panther Party to other places, right? Without having knowledge and education, you can start a revolution, but can you turn the revolution off? Can you really control the people and set a foundation after you started something that caused chaos, right? For right or for wrong reasons. How successful are you as a group of people, as a collective, would you be if you set a foundation after the revolution instead of having a foundation and then the revolution? But you can't get the foundation if you don't have the knowledge and education, because again, if you're going just off the power of the gun, and any individual can be powerful, whether they're smart or not. But That's why I said man, revolution means radical change, guys. Please, 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 we got to have a better understanding. And again, I'm combating him almost 60 years later. What he's saying was necessary for back then. What I'm telling you now, we have de-evolved as a society when it comes to history, knowledge, and education, that our elders understood the concept of international unification. They understood the solidarity of people coming from oppressed situations. They understood how much intersectionalities that their governments plus the U.S. government had intertwined with one another. We don't have that knowledge today. We are suppressed from that for specific reasons, so that way the government doesn't relive what happened once before that caused massive change in this country. Like I said, listen, I hear about the pew-pews. I hear about them. But for me, if you don't have knowledge and education, revolution doesn't come in the eye of a gun. What the eye of a gun is going to bring you is more chaos and destruction. Because again, anybody feel like a head honcho when they got something in their hands. Anybody with an arm or a pistol can take out anybody. But it takes brains to structure something to organize people together. I'm just saying.
And in one sense, only by the power of the gun can the whole world be transformed into the earthly paradise dreamed of by the people from time immemorial. One successful practitioner of the art and science of national liberation and self-defense, Brother Mao Zedong, put it this way: "We are advocates of the abolition of war. We do not want war, but war can only be abolished through war. And in order to get rid of the gun, it is necessary to take up the gun." The blood, sweat, tears, and suffering of black people are the foundations of the wealth and power of the United States of America. We were forced to build America, and if forced to, we will tear it down. The immediate result of this destruction will be suffering and bloodshed, but the end result will be perpetual peace for all mankind.
F1 in the comments. Let's keep this space a safe space. I don't want TikTok or YouTube to interpretate this as like a radical organizing or like, no, again, this is a product of the times. This was during the 1960s, 1967s, during a moment where radical change was needed, and during a moment of time where society was projecting violence at a higher rate than what is projected today. So again, he's a product of his environment. They're a product of their time. What they needed to do and how they did it is what they needed to do and how they did it. Again, I have no critique from my perspective. I'm just telling you on today in 2024, only believing the revolution can only be gained in the hands of a gun is not true. It's not true. Don't let anyone mislead you to that today, because without education and knowledge, we all gonna keep competing with one another. It's human nature, and due to the assimilation, we have been competing against one another. Just saying.
From In Defense of Self-Defense, 2, July 3rd, 1967. Historically, the power structure has demanded that black leaders cater to their desires and to the ends of the imperialistic racism of the oppressor. The power structure has endorsed those black leaders who have reduced themselves to nothing more than apologizing parrots. They have divided the so-called black leaders within the political arena. The oppressors sponsor radio programs, give space in their racist newspapers, and show them the luxury enjoyed only by the oppressor. The black leaders serve the oppressor by purposely keeping the people submissive, passive, and non-violent, turning a deaf ear to the cries of the suffering and downtrodden, the unemployed and welfare recipients who hunger for liberation by any means necessary. Historically, there have been a few black men who have rejected the handouts of the oppressor and who have refused to spread the oppressor's treacherous principles of deceit, gradual indoctrination, and brainwashing, and who have refused to indulge in the criminal activity of teaching submission, fear, and love for an enemy who hates the very color black and is determined to commit genocide on an international scale. There has always existed in the black colony of Afro-America a fundamental difference over which tactics, from the broad spectrum of alternatives, black people should employ in their struggle for national liberation. One side contends that black people are in the peculiar position where, in order to gain acceptance into the mainstream of American life, they must employ no tactic that will anger the oppressor whites. This view holds that black people constitute a hopeless minority, and that salvation for black people lies in developing brotherly relations. There are certain tactics that are taboo. Violence against the oppressor must be avoided at all costs, because the oppressor will retaliate with superior violence. So black people may protest, but not protect. They can complain, but not cut and shoot. In short, black people must at all costs remain nonviolent. On the other side, we find that the point of departure is the principle that the oppressor has no rights that the oppressed is bound to respect. Kill the slave master, destroy him utterly, move against him with implacable fortitude.
F1.
Break his oppressive power by any means necessary. Men who have stood before the black masses and recommended this response to the oppression have been held in fear by the oppressor. The blacks in the colony who were wed to the nonviolent alternative could not relate to the advocates of implacable opposition to the oppressor, because the oppressor always prefers to deal with the less radical, i.e. less dangerous, spokesman for his subjects. He would prefer that his subjects had no spokesman at all, or better yet, he wishes to speak for them himself. Unable to do this practically, he does the next best thing and endorses spokesmen who will allow him to speak through them to the masses. Paramount among his imperatives is to see to it that implacable spokesmen are never allowed to communicate their message to the masses.
Listen up.
Their oppressor will resort to any means necessary to silence them.
Listen.
The oppressor, the endorsed spokesman, and the implacables form the 3 points of a triangle of death.
And no cap, when I hear this, you could even compare this to a lot of internal oppression that happens within our communities when it comes to elite capture and individuals using either certain knowledge, education, or certain spaces, popularity, to be able to use it against other people, to oppress, to be able to get other groups, to suppress individuals from participating in community, things, such as knowledge, education, other conversations that happen on this platform and every other platform. You see how the psychological chain continues, that we apply some of those tactics that's been done to us, and we sit there and perpetuate it to individuals that are even within our communities. Please go read Elite Capture, How the World's Powerful Stole Identity and Everything Else. Please. Because you can understand that an elite is not necessarily a YT individual or individual with high capital. And an elite and can be almost any individual depending on what skill, what tools they have, and what they know and what room that they're in. Because anybody can be an elite if you can be able to capture the room and navigate it in your direction or your favor. So this is why I say, the psychological guys, I'm going to keep talking about it because I don't think we talk about it enough, especially for the men out there. Y'all definitely don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about it enough. We slacking on this because this is what contributes to a lot of our downfall with our emotional issues. Let's get to it.
The oppressor looks upon the endorsed spokesman as a tool to use against the implacables to keep the masses passive within the acceptable limits of the tactics he is capable of containing. The endorsed spokesmen look upon the oppressor as a guardian angel who can always be depended upon to protect him from the wrath of the implacables, while he looks upon the implacables as dangerous and irresponsible madmen who, by angering the oppressor, will certainly provoke a bloodbath in which they themselves might get washed away. The implacables view both the oppressors and the endorsed leaders as his deadly enemies. If anything, he has a more profound hatred for the endorsed leaders than he has for the oppressor himself, because the implacables know that they can deal with the oppressor only after they have driven the endorsed spokesman off the scene. Historically, the endorsed spokesmen have always held the upper hand over the implacables. In Afro-American history, there are shining brief moments when the implacables have outmaneuvered the oppressor and the endorsed spokesman and gained the attention of the black masses. The black masses, recognizing the implacables in the depths of their despair, respond magnetically to the implacables and bestow a devotion and loyalty to them that frightens the oppressor and endorsed spokesman into a panic-stricken frenzy, often causing them to leap into a rash act of murder, imprisonment, or exile to silence the implacables and to get their show back on the road. The masses of black people have always been deeply entrenched and involved in the basic necessities of life. They have not had time to abstract their situation. Abstractions come only with leisure. The people have not had the luxury of leisure. Therefore, the people have been very aware of the true definition of politics. Politics is merely the desire of individuals and groups to satisfy their basic needs first.
Listen.
Food, shelter, and clothing, and security for themselves and their loved ones. The black leaders endorsed by the power structure have attempted to sell the people the simple-minded theory that politics is holding a political office, being able to move into a $40,000 home, being able to sit near white people in a restaurant, while in fact the black masses have not been able to pay the rent of a $40 rat-infested hovel. The black leaders have led the community to believe that brutality and force could be ended by subjecting the people to this very force of self-sacrificing demonstrations. The black people realize brutality and force can only be inflicted if there is submission. The community has not responded in the past or in the present to the absurd, erroneous, and deceitful tactics of so-called legitimate black leaders. The community realizes that force and brutality can only be eliminated by counterforce through self-defense. Leaders who have recommended these tactics have never had the support and following of the downtrodden black masses who comprise the bulk of the community. The grassroots, the downtrodden of the black community, though rejecting the hand-picked handkerchief heads endorsed by the power structure, have not had the academic or administrative knowledge to form a long resistance to the brutality. Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X were the two black men of the 20th century who posed an implacable challenge to both the oppressor and the endorsed spokesman.
And I feel, and in my personal opinion, I feel like they feel this way is because they don't have the full participation of the entire black community at this time. We have a lot of individuals who are fearful of losing just a little bit of what they have. I believe if we really wanted to attack the system and shut the system down, we don't have to necessarily do it with brutal force, right? We can just stop contributing to their economy. We can stop spending our dollars with them. We can stop taking the public transportations and things that, again, economically, that's a factor for them, where if we don't participate, whether it's labor-wise or us spending-wise, they cannot keep their economy rotating, economy functioning. And if we really look at it, this is how a lot of major things have changed within history, is that's how you prove your point. If you want to prove your value, well, listen, I'll show you what my dollar's worth. If my dollar's not worth anything to you, then you don't rely on it. If you don't rely on it, then it's not a factor. But if that's something you rely on and is beneficial and it's a factor for you and it's one of your key components of elements to be able to continue to keep going, you have to cater to the dollar. And that's what happened a lot of the times. We just don't want to consider that things because we want to think that the United States or any other government does things based off the humanitarian basis, when in reality it's not. It's based off the dollar. It's based off what they can profit off of. If you don't believe me in that, then why the hell is the United States #1 revenue is weapons trading? Because they sell to everybody. If it's about humanitarian, causes. Just throwing nuance out there.
In our time, Malcolm stood on the threshold with the oppressor and the endorsed spokesman in a bag that they could not get out of.
I'm gonna move to the side because I don't like to eat on camera, but I'm standing right here, everybody. So keep tapping in. Don't go nowhere. I want to eat my food to just cool down, and I don't like to eat on camera. So salute to everybody. Let's keep it pushing. We have 1 minute left on this chapter, and then we'll probably do a couple of small chapters because I got a couple of small chapters left in this next couple of minutes.
Implacable to the ultimate degree, held out to the black masses the historical, stupendous victory of black collective salvation and liberation from the chains of the oppressor and the treacherous embrace of the endorsed spokesman. Only with the gun were the black masses denied this victory. But they learned from Malcolm that with the gun, they can recapture their dreams and make them a reality. The heirs of Malcolm now stand millions strong on their corner of the triangle, facing the racist dog oppressor and the soulless endorsed spokesman. The heirs of Malcolm have picked up the gun and, taking first things first, are moving to expose the endorsed spokesman so the black masses can see them for what they are and have always been. The choice offered by the heirs of Malcolm to the endorsed spokesman is to repudiate the oppressor and to crawl back to their own people and earn a speedy reprieve, or face a merciless, speedy, and most timely execution for treason and being too wrong for too long. The correct handling of a revolution. July 20, 1967. The black masses are handling the resistance incorrectly. When the brothers in East Oakland, having learned their resistance fighting from Watts, amassed the people in the streets, threw bricks and Molotov cocktails to destroy property and create disruption, they were herded into a small area by the Gestapo police and immediately contained by the brutal violence of the oppressor's storm troops. Although this manner of resistance is sporadic, short-lived, and costly, it has been transmitted across the country to all the ghettos of the black nation. The identity of the first man who threw a Molotov cocktail is not known by the masses, yet they respect and imitate his action. In the same way, the actions of the party will be imitated by the people if the people respect these activities. The primary job of the party is to provide leadership for the people. It must teach by words and action the correct strategic methods of prolonged resistance. When the people learn that it is no longer advantageous for them to resist by going into the streets in large numbers, and when they see the advantage in the activities of the guerrilla warfare method, they will quickly follow this example. But first, they must respect the party which is transmitting this message. When the vanguard group destroys the machinery of the oppressor by dealing with him in small groups of 3 and 4, and then escapes the might of the oppressor, the masses will be impressed and more likely to adhere to this correct strategy. When the masses hear that a Gestapo policeman has been executed while sipping coffee at a counter, and the revolutionary executioners fled without being traced, the masses will see the validity of this kind of resistance. It is not necessary to organize 30 million black people in primary groups of 2s and 3s, but it is important for the party to show the people how to stage a revolution. There are 3 ways one can learn: through study, observation, and experience. Since the black community is composed basically of activists, observation of or participation in activity are the principal ways the community learns. To learn by studying is good, but to learn by experience is better. Because the black community is not a reading community, it is very important that the vanguard group be essentially activists. Without this knowledge of the black community, a black revolution in racist America is impossible. The main function of the party is to awaken the people and teach them the strategic method of resisting a power structure which is prepared not only to combat with massive brutality the people's resistance, but to annihilate totally the black population. If it is learned by the power structure that black people have X number of guns in their possession, that information will not stimulate the power structure to prepare itself with guns. It is already prepared. The end result of this revolutionary education will be not make the people aware of the tools and methods of liberation, there will be no means by which the people can mobilize. The relationship between the vanguard party and the masses is a secondary relationship. The relationship among the members of the vanguard party is a primary relationship. If the party machinery is to be effective, it is important that the members of the party group maintain a face-to-face relationship with each other. It is impossible to put together functional party machinery or programs without this direct relationship. To minimize the danger of Uncle Tom informers and opportunists, the members of the vanguard group should be tested revolutionaries. The main purpose of the vanguard group should be to raise the consciousness of the masses through educational programs and other activities. The sleeping masses must be bombarded with the correct approach to struggle, and the party must use all means available to get this information across to the masses. In order to do so, the masses must know that the party exists. A vanguard party is never underground in the beginning of its existence. That would limit its effectiveness and educational goals. How can you teach people if the people do not know and respect you? The party must exist above ground as long as the dog power structure will allow, and hopefully when the party is forced to go underground, the party's message will already have been put across to the people. The vanguard party's activities on the surface will necessarily be short-lived. Thus, the party must make a tremendous impact upon the people before it is driven into secrecy. By that time, the people will know the party exists and will seek further information about its activities when it is driven underground. Many would-be revolutionaries work under the fallacious notion that the vanguard party should be a secret organization which the power structure knows nothing about, and that the masses know nothing about except for occasional letters that come to their homes by night. Underground parties cannot distribute leaflets announcing an underground meeting. Such contradictions and inconsistencies are not recognized by these so-called revolutionaries.
Listen.
They are, in fact, afraid of the very danger that they are asking the people to confront. These so-called revolutionaries want the people to say what they themselves are afraid to say, to do what they themselves are afraid to do. That kind of revolutionary is a coward and a hypocrite. A true revolutionary realizes that if he is sincere, death is imminent. The things he is saying and doing are extremely dangerous. Without this realization, it is pointless to proceed as a revolutionary.
Facts.
If these imposters would investigate the history of revolution, they would see that the vanguard group always starts out above ground and is driven underground by the aggressor. The Cuban Revolution is an example. When Fidel Castro started to resist the butcher Batista and the American running dogs, he began by speaking publicly on the University of Havana campus. He was later driven to the hills. His impact upon the dispossessed people of Cuba was tremendous, and his teachings were received with much respect. When he went into hiding, the Cuban people searched him out, going to the hills to find him and his band of 12. Castro handled the revolutionary struggle correctly, and if the Chinese Revolution is investigated, it will be seen that the Communist Party operated quite openly in order to muster support from the masses.
Listen.
There are many more examples of successful revolutionary struggle from which one can learn the correct approach. The revolution in Kenya, the Algerian Revolution discussed in Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth,
Tap the screen,
the
tap the
Russian
screen.
Revolution, the works of Chairman Mao Zedong, and a host of others. Millions and millions of oppressed people may not know members of the vanguard party personally, but they will learn of its activities and its proper strategy for liberation through an indirect acquaintance provided by the mass media. But it is not enough to rely on the media of the power structure. It is of prime importance that the vanguard party develop its own communications organ, such as a newspaper, and at the same time provide strategic revolutionary art and destruction of the oppressor's machinery. For example, in Watts, the economy and property of the oppressor was destroyed to such an extent that no matter how the oppressor tried in his press to whitewash the activities of the Black brothers, the real nature and cause of the activity was communicated to every Black community. And no matter how the oppressor tried in his own media to distort and confuse the message of Brother Stokely Carmichael, Black people all over the country understood it perfectly and welcomed it. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense teaches that, in the final analysis, the guns, hand grenades, bazookas, and other equipment necessary for defense must be supplied by the power structure. As exemplified by the Viet Cong, these weapons must be taken from the oppressor. Therefore, the greater the military preparation on the part of the oppressor, the greater the availability of weapons for the Black community. It is believed by some hypocrites that when the people are taught by the vanguard group to prepare for resistance, this only brings the man down on them with increasing violence and brutality. But the fact is that when the man becomes more oppressive, he only heightens revolutionary fervor. So if things get worse for oppressed people, they will feel the need for revolution and resistance. The people make revolution. The oppressors, by their brutal actions, cause resistance by the people. The vanguard party only teaches the correct methods of resistance. The complaint of the hypocrites that the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense is exposing the people to deeper suffering is an incorrect observation. By their rebellions in the Black communities across the country, the people have proved that they will not tolerate any more oppression by the racist dog police.
As we shouldn't.
They are looking now for guidance to extend and strengthen their resistance struggle. The vanguard party must exemplify the characteristics that make them worthy of leadership. A functional definition of politics. January 17, 1969. Politics is war without bloodshed. War is politics with bloodshed.
Hold on. That was a bar. We're going to bring that back. Yo, salute to everybody on TikTok. Salute to everybody on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share on this live video, guys, on TikTok and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bells on YouTube. Let's get right back into it, guys. I had to rewind it. That was some deep shit. Let's listen to it clearly.
A functional definition of politics. January 17, 1969. Politics is war without bloodshed. War is politics with bloodshed. When the peaceful means of politics are exhausted and the people do not get what they want, politics is continued. Usually this ends up in physical conflict, which is called war and is also political. Black people are not free because we lack political power. Historically, Black Reconstruction failed after the Civil War because Blacks had neither political nor military power. The masses of Black people at the time, nevertheless, were very clear on the definition of political power. It is evident in the songs of time. On the day of Jubilee, we'd have 40 acres and 2 mules. This was promised to Black people by the Freedmen's Bureau, and as far as the Black masses were concerned, this was freedom. For the talented tenth of Blacks living during the latter 19th century, freedom was operative in more explicitly political arenas, such as electoral politics. Although many of these Blacks were often better educated than most whites in the South, having received schooling in France, Canada, and England, early Black elected officials lacked the influence necessary to empower Blacks at large. And it was for this reason, among others, that Reconstruction failed. When one operates in the political arena, it is assumed that he has access to, or at least represents, power. There are essentially 3 forms of political power in this respect: economic, land, feudal power, and military. If Black people had received 40 acres and 2 mules, we would have developed a political force and chosen a representative to speak on our behalf of our interests as a people. Instead, Blacks received nothing from the government, thereby contributing to the continuation of our oppressed status. It was absurd to have a Black representative in the political arena where no real political influence existed for Black people. Whites, however, had and have a base of power from which they exert political consequence. This is evident in the fact that when the farmers are not given adequate prices for their crops, the economy receives a political consequence. Farmers let their crops rot in the field. To be political, you must have a political consequence when you do not receive your desires. Otherwise, you are non-political. When black people send a representative, he is somewhat absurd because he has very little political influence. He does not represent land power because we do not own any land. He does not represent economic or industrial power because black people do not own the means of production. The only way he can become political is to represent what is commonly called a military power, which the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls self-defense power. Black people develop self-defense power by arming themselves from house to house, block to block, community to community throughout the nation. Then we will choose a political representative, and he will state the desires of the black masses. If the desires are not met, the power structure will receive a political consequence. We will make it economically non-profitable for those in power to go on with their oppressive ways. Now we will negotiate as equals. There will be a balance between the people who are economically powerful and the people who are potentially economically destructive. The white racist oppresses black people for reasons not only related to racism, but also for purposes having to do with the fact that it is economically profitable to do so. Black people must develop the political power that will make it unprofitable for racists to continue oppressing us. If the white racist imperialists in America continue to wage war against all people of color throughout the world, while also waging a civil war against blacks here in America, it will be economically impossible for him to survive. This racist United States operates with the motive of profit. He lifts the gun and escalates war for profit. We will make him lower his guns because they will no longer serve his profit motive. Every man is born. Therefore, he has a right to live and a right to share in the wealth of his nation. If he is denied the right to work, he is denied the right to live. If he can't work, he deserves a high standard of living, regardless of his education or skill. Those who control our economic system are obligated to furnish each man with a livelihood. If they cannot or will not do this, they do not deserve the position of administrators.
Right.
The means of production should be taken away and placed in the hands of the people who can organize a system that will provide everyone with a source of livelihood. Motivated by a sincere interest in our general welfare and not the interest of private property, the people will choose capable administrators to control the means of production and the land that is rightfully theirs. Until the people are in possession of these controls, there will be no peace. Black people must control the destiny of their community. Black people desire to determine their own destiny. As a result, they are constantly inflicted with brutality from the occupying army, embodied by the police department. There is a great similarity between the occupying army in Southeast Asia and the occupation of our communities by the racist police. The armies were not sent to protect the people of South Vietnam, but to brutalize and oppress them in the self-interests of imperial powers. There should be no division or conflict of interest between the people and the police. Once there is a division, the police become the enemy of the people. The police should serve the interest of the people and be one and the same. When this principle breaks down, the police become an occupying army. When one race has oppressed another and policemen are recruited from the oppressor race to patrol the communities of the oppressed people, an intolerable contradiction exists.
Now every police officer looks like he's a part of SWAT.
The racist dog policemen must withdraw immediately from our communities, cease their wanton murder and brutality and torture of black people, or face the wrath of the armed people. On the peace movement.
Really quick, I'm going to let they got 3 short chapters. One is, this one's 8 minutes, the other one is 8 minutes, and the last one is going to be 6 minutes. So we got about 20 something minutes left, guys. So tap that screen, share this live. We are gonna end it after those three components because it's gonna lead into the speech he delivered at Boston College, November 18th, 1971. So I'm gonna leave that chapter to actually start off the next live tomorrow. So we got about 20 minutes or so, give or take. Tap the screen, share this live. Let's get back into it.
August 15, 1969. The peace movement is extremely important, more important than I thought it was 2 years ago. The reason I place so much more emphasis on the peace movement is that I now see that if peace were to come about, it would revolutionize the basic economic composition of the country. We all know now this is a garrison state, a warfare state, and not by accident. When capitalism reaches a point where it can no longer expand, it looks for other avenues, other deposits, other places to expand the capitalist's interest. At this time, super capitalists, General Motors, Chrysler, General Dynamics, and all the super companies, I understand there's about 76 that control the whole economy of this country, and their companies are the main contractors for the Pentagon. In other words, super capitalists are now putting their overexpanded capitalistic surplus into military equipment. This military equipment is then placed in foreign countries, such as Vietnam and the Dominican Republic. With the wedding of industry and the Pentagon, there is a new avenue to invest in. Military equipment is an expandable avenue, because the purpose of the equipment is to explode. Therefore, you must keep building new explosives. A perpetual process. We know that the U.S. has a secret pact with Thailand. These pacts are all part of a super plan to keep the economy going. What would happen then if peace were to come about? There would not be that final depository for expendable goods, and the surplus could then be returned to the country. The military plants, related defense plants, and industrial plants would be brought to a grinding halt. This is why some union representatives support the war effort. The AFL-CIO supported the invasion of the Dominican Republic. It forced out Juan Bosch for the simple reason that, as long as the war continues, they know they can exploit the people through taxation and human lives. We sent soldiers, you see, brothers, because they're expendable too. People are expendable. One of the favored arguments of the capitalists is that America is not an imperialistic country because the traditional ways and means of imperialism is to go into a developing country, rape it of its raw materials, refine them either in the colony or the mother country, and sell them back at a higher price to the colonized people. And the argument is that America is not doing that. We don't need any equipment or raw materials out of Vietnam. And this is very true. This contradiction puzzled me for a while. But now I understand that something new has happened. With the wedding of science and industry, the industrial plants in America have solved the basic problem of raw materials through synthetics and the knowledge of using raw materials that are already here in a variety of ways, therefore keeping the plants going. The favorite argument of the capitalist is, we must be there to stop communism or wars of subversion. What is overlooked is the fact that the super capitalists know we don't need to rape the country. I think Cuba was the turning point away from the traditional colonized country. Another argument is that we need the strategic military positions. But we know that the U.S. does not need strategic military positions because they already have enough equipment to defend this country from any point in the world if attacked.
Yeah, but the point is not about defense, it's about offense. The United States can be anywhere in a matter of under 4 or 5 hours, if that.
Be there to use this developing country as depository for expendable goods. In traditional imperialism, people from the mother country usually go to the colony, set up government and the leaders of the military, but this is not so in America. People from the mother country have not gone to the colonized country of Vietnam and jockeyed for position. but the profit has all been turned back to America. The defense contractors jockey for position now in the mother country for defense contracts. Then they set up a puppet government or military regime to supply these developing countries with military equipment. They really do not want to be in Vietnam or any of the developing countries because they feel, and they have all done this, that they have bought off the militaries in these various developing countries so that they will only be an arm of the Pentagon. The military regime in Greece is a good example. They have full control of the military officers, paying them high salaries so they feel that they will not have to send American troops and disturb the mother country. But what happens when one battalion of military is defeated? Then you send in reinforcements for the defeated puppet army in that developing country. The whole government becomes subject to the army, and the army becomes suspicious of the civil government in these developing countries because they are told by the Pentagon through indoctrination and money that the civil government is a communist threat to the nation. Military coups follow. And this is what happens over and over with the support of the U.S. We have actually an imperialistic variation of imperialism. The jockeying for positions of power is inside of the mother country now, so in fact, the American people have become colonized. At one time, I thought that only blacks were colonized.
Listen.
But I think we have to change our rhetoric to an extent, because the whole American people have been colonized, if you view exploitation as a colonized effect. 76 companies have exploited everyone. American people are colonized people, even more so than the people in developing countries where the military operates. This is why the peace movement is so important. If the peace movement is successful, then the revolution will be successful. If the peace movement fails, then the revolution in the mother country fails.
Facts.
In other words, the people would be pushed so uptight once war were to stop that the whole economy would go down the drain. Only a planned economy could combat the chaos that an absence of incentive causes. Now war is the incentive for the military contractors. This is why it is very important that we have communications with the peace movement. Not only should we communicate with it, we should actually get out and support it fully in various ways, including literature and demonstrations. We have to realize our position, and we have to know ourselves and know our enemies. 1,000 wars and 1,000 victories. And until we know who the enemy is and what the situation is, we will only be marking time. Even the peace movement doesn't compromise our defense principles. We still defend ourselves against attack and against aggression. But overall, we are advocating the end to all wars. But yet, we support the self-defense of the Vietnamese people and all the people who are struggling. Prison. Where is thy victory? January 3rd, 1970. When a person studies mathematics, he learns that there are many mathematical laws that determine the approach he must take to solving the problems presented to him. In the study of geometry, one of the first laws a person learns is that the whole is not greater than the sum of its parts. This means simply that one cannot have a geometrical figure, such as a circle or a square, that contains more than it does when broken down into smaller parts. Therefore, if all the smaller parts add up to a certain amount, the entire figure cannot add up to a larger amount.
Nope.
The prison cannot have a victory over the prisoner because those in charge take the same kind of approach and assume, if they have the whole body in a cell, that they have contained all that makes up the person. But a prisoner is not a geometrical figure, and an approach that is successful in mathematics is wholly unsuccessful when dealing with human beings. In the case of the human, we are not dealing only with the single individual.
Nope.
We are also dealing with the ideas and beliefs that have motivated him and that sustain him, even when his body is confined. In the case of humanity, the whole is much greater than its parts, because the whole includes the body, which is measurable and confinable, and also the ideas, which cannot be measured and cannot be confined. The ideas that can and will sustain our movement for total freedom and dignity of the people cannot be imprisoned, for they are to be found in the people, all the people, wherever they are. As long as the people live by the ideas of freedom and dignity, there will be no prison that can hold our movement down. Ideas move from one person to another by the association of brothers and sisters who recognize that a most evil system of capitalism has set us against each other, although our real enemy is the exploiter who profits from our poverty. When we realize such an idea, then we come to love and appreciate our brothers and sisters who we may have seen as enemies, and those exploiters who we may have seen as friends are revealed for what they truly are to all oppressed people.
Listen.
The people are the idea. The respect and dignity of the people as they move toward their freedom are the sustaining forces that reach into and out of the prison. The walls, the bars, the guns, and the guards can never encircle or hold down the idea of the people. And the people must always carry forward the idea, which is their dignity and their beauty. The prison operates with the concept that since it has a person's body, it has his entire being, because the whole cannot be greater than the sum of its parts.
Absolutely not.
They put the body in a cell and seem to get some sense of relief and security from that fact. The idea of prison victory, then, is that when the person in jail begins to act, think, and believe the way they want him to, they have won the battle and the person is then rehabilitated. But this cannot be the case because those who operate the prisons have failed to examine their own beliefs thoroughly.
Facts.
And they fail to understand the types of people they attempt to control.
Facts.
Therefore, even when the prison thinks it has won the victory, there is no victory.
Nope.
There are two types of prisoners. The largest number are those who accept the legitimacy of the assumptions upon which the society is based.
Right.
They wish to acquire the same goals as everybody else: money, power, and conspicuous consumption. In order to do so, however, they adopt techniques and methods that the society has defined as illegitimate. When this is discovered, such people are put in jail. They may be called illegitimate capitalists, since their aim is to acquire everything this capitalistic society defines as legitimate. The second type of prisoner is the one who rejects the legitimacy of the assumptions upon which the society is based. He argues that the people at the bottom of the society are exploited for the profit and advantage of those at the top.
Which is accurate.
Thus, the oppressed exist and will always be used to maintain the privileged status of the exploiters.
Which is accurate.
There is no sacredness, there is no dignity in either exploiting or being exploited.
Nope.
Although this system may take the society function at a high level of technological efficiency, it is an illegitimate system, since it rests upon the suffering of humans who are as worthy and as dignified as those who do not suffer. Thus, the second type of prisoner says that the society is corrupt and illegitimate and must be overthrown. This second type of prisoner is the political prisoner. They do not accept the legitimacy of the society and cannot participate in its corrupting exploitation, whether they are in the prison or on the block. The prison cannot gain a victory over either type of prisoner, no matter how hard it tries. The illegitimate capitalist recognizes that if he plays the game the prison wants him to play, he will have his time reduced and be released to continue his activities. Therefore, he is willing to go through the prison programs and say the things the prison authorities want to hear.
Assimilation.
The prison assumes he is rehabilitated and ready for the society. The prisoner has really played the prison's game so that he can be released to resume pursuit of his capitalistic goals. There is no victory, for the prisoner from the get-go accepted the idea of the society. He pretends to accept the idea of the prison as a part of the game he has always played. The prison cannot gain a victory over the political prisoner because he has nothing to be rehabilitated from or to. He refuses to accept the legitimacy of the system and refuses to participate. To participate is to admit that the society is legitimate because of its exploitation of the oppressed. This is the idea that the political prisoner does not accept. This is the idea for which he has been imprisoned, and this is the reason why he cannot cooperate with the system. The political prisoner will, in fact, serve his time, just as will the illegitimate capitalist. Yet the idea that motivated and sustains the political prisoner rests in the people. All the prison has is a body. The dignity and beauty of man rests in the human spirit, which makes him more than simply a physical being. This spirit must never be suppressed for exploitation by others. As long as the people recognize the beauty of their human spirits and move against suppression and exploitation, they will be carrying out one of the most beautiful ideas of all time, because the human whole is much greater than the sum of its parts. The ideas will always be among the people. The prison cannot be victorious because walls, bars, and guards cannot conquer or hold down an idea.
That was deep. That was deep right there. We have 6 minutes left. We're going to do this short chapter right now. Do me a favor. Let's end this chapter out with a bang on TikTok. Let's try to get to like 20K, guys. Let's tap it out on YouTube. Let's tap it out as well. There's no actual goals for YouTube, but I can see people tapping. Let's tap it up. Let's shake up the algorithm. Let's stay positive and productive. And for everybody on TikTok, you can find me on YouTube as well. Right now, we're dual streaming right now. So you can actually go catch some of the content. If you missed anything, you can go back and catch it later. You can go watch some of the listen to some of the previous chapters. They are up there. This is part 3 on YouTube. We got part 2 and 1, so that way you can go back and go listen to it. But again, we're about to end the chapter out. We got about 6.5 minutes left. Let's tap into this. I'm gonna go check on my dog because he over there howling. I'll be right back.
The Women's Liberation and Gay Liberation Movements. August 15, 1970. During the past few years, strong movements have developed among women and among homosexuals seeking their liberation. There has been some uncertainty about how to relate to these movements. Whatever your personal opinions and your insecurities about homosexuality and the various liberation movements among homosexuals and women, and I speak of the homosexuals and women as oppressed groups, we should try to unite with them in a revolutionary fashion. I say whatever your insecurities are, because as we very well know, sometimes our first instinct is to want to hit a homosexual in the mouth and want a woman to be quiet. We want to hit a homosexual in the mouth because we are afraid that we might be homosexual. And we want to hit the woman or
F1 in the comments. Please tap the screen and protect this live. Again, this is for educational purposes only, and this was in 1970s, so please listen carefully and don't take what he's saying out of context.
Because we are afraid that she might castrate us or take the nuts that we might not have to start with. We must gain security in ourselves and therefore have respect and feelings for all oppressed people. We must not use the racist attitude that the white racists use against our people because they are black and poor. Many times, the poorest white person is the most racist because he is afraid that he might lose something or discover something that he does not have. So you're some kind of threat to him. This kind of psychology is in operation when we view oppressed people and we are angry with them because of their particular kind of behavior.
Thank you for the
or
gifts.
Their particular kind of deviation from the established norm. Remember, we have not established a revolutionary value system. We are only in the process of establishing it. I do not remember our ever constituting any value that said that a revolutionary must say offensive things toward homosexuals, or that a revolutionary should make sure that women do not speak out about their own particular kind of oppression. As a matter of fact, it is just the opposite. We say that we recognize the women's right to be free. We have not said much about the homosexual at all. But we must relate to the homosexual movement because it is a real thing. And I know through reading and through my life experience and observations that homosexuals are not given freedom and liberty by anyone in the society. They might be the most oppressed people in the society. And what made them homosexual? Perhaps it's a phenomenon that I don't understand entirely. Some people say that it is the decadence of capitalism. I don't know if that is the case. I rather doubt it. But whatever the case is, we know that homosexuality is a fact that exists, and we must understand it in its purest form. That is, a person should have the freedom to use his body in whatever way he wants. That is not endorsing things in homosexuality that we wouldn't view as revolutionary. But there is nothing to say that a homosexual cannot also be a revolutionary. And maybe I'm now injecting some of my prejudice by saying that even a homosexual can be a revolutionary. Quite the contrary. Maybe a homosexual could be the most revolutionary. When we have revolutionary conferences, rallies, and demonstrations, there should be full participation of the gay liberation movement and the women's liberation movement. Some groups might be more revolutionary than others. We should not use the actions of a few to say that they are all reactionary or counter-revolutionary, because they are not. We should deal with the factions just as we deal with any other group or party that claims to be revolutionary. We should try to judge somehow whether they are operating in a sincere revolutionary fashion and from a really oppressed situation. And we will grant that if they are women, they are probably oppressed. If they do things that are unrevolutionary or counter-revolutionary, then criticize that action. If we feel that the group in spirit means to be revolutionary in practice, but they make mistakes in interpretation of the revolutionary philosophy, or they do not understand the dialectics of the social forces in operation, we should criticize that and not criticize them because they are women trying to be free. And the same is true for homosexuals. We should never say a whole movement is dishonest, when in fact they are trying to be honest. They are just making honest mistakes. Friends are allowed to make mistakes. The enemy is not allowed to make mistakes because his whole existence is a mistake and we suffer from it. But the Women's Liberation Front and Gay Liberation Front are our friends. They are potential allies, and we need as many allies as possible. We should be willing to discuss the insecurities that many people have about homosexuality. When I say insecurities, I mean the fear that they are some kind of threat to our manhood. I can understand this fear. Because of the long conditioning process that builds insecurity in the American male, homosexuality might produce certain hang-ups in us. I have hang-ups myself about male homosexuality. But on the other hand, I have no hang-up about female homosexuality, and that is a phenomenon in itself. I think it is probably because male homosexuality is a threat to me, and female homosexuality is not. We should be careful about using those terms that might turn our friends off. The terms faggot and punk should be deleted from our vocabulary. And especially, we should not attach names normally designed for homosexuals to men who are enemies of the people, such as Nixon or Mitchell. Homosexuals are not enemies of the people. We should try to form a working coalition with the gay liberation and women's liberation groups. We must always handle social forces in the most appropriate manner.
Ooh, that was deep. That was a good way to end out today's segment of the book, guys. I really appreciate everybody. Wow, that last part was definitely heavy. But I felt exactly what he was saying. And again, just for historical context, right? I'll tell you exact year this was in. This was hold on. This was August 15th, 1970. August 15th, 1970 is where that was inserted. But listen, I appreciate all the love and support from everybody. Thanks everybody that's on YouTube right now. I really appreciate all the love and support. Everybody transferring over, being able to go subscribe on YouTube. Again, some of the books that I'm going to bring on here are going to be a little bit more heavier, and they're going to be dedicated to more adult context. So TikTok may be putting me on timeout every so often, so to be able to avoid that, you guys can catch the lives on YouTube. This is just one of many books that we are going to go over and continue to go over. But I wanted to tell you guys thank you, man. I appreciate all the love and support. Don't forget, we are going to Yabucoa, Puerto Rico for the Young Lords Back to Borinquen project from October 5th to the 16th. So if anybody want to participate, join, message me. If anybody wants to donate or even look up the Marco Sanchez Community Center, maybe donate to them directly. Like, you guys can do that too. Please go look them up. They need all the help and support they can get. I will be down there for about a week and a half or something like that. Maybe 2 weeks. I got my ticket. I think I'm down there 2 weeks. I don't know. I got to go look at my ticket again. But I will be down there. I know I have some of my followers that are going to meet up with us also down there and participate, which is actually dope because that's something that we wanted to do. We're tired of individuals just always preaching, oh, yeah, go support this. Yeah, go support that. Yeah, we support real nonprofits. Yeah, we do this. Yeah, we. You know what? Listen, let's stop all of this. And let's start doing, right? Let's open up platforms for our people to actually participate. Let's open the doors. Sometimes not for nothing, just donating money is cool, but sometimes actually being a part of and participating and doing these things with your people is even better, right? It's a different feeling. It's a different emotion. Like what I do for the island, or when I do, or however I do what I do, I'm going to be honest, it's not for you guys on TikTok. It's not for anybody else, but for me and the individuals that I grew a connection with, and we built bridges and bonded together for the moment. Like, that's what I do it for. And I got to be honest, I want some of you guys to experience that. So that way you can stop allowing other individuals to manipulate, off a popularity contest. Like, yo, it's cool. Oh my God. But like I said, let's start supporting one another. Let's leave the bochinche out of sight, out of mind, because it's irrelevant, at least on this side of the platform. And let's continue to, try to uplift one another and continue building these bridges. I really appreciate everybody these last couple of weeks, especially transitioning over to YouTube. I've been having a steady, it's low numbers on YouTube, but it's steady individuals, meaning that individuals, show me enough love that they're consistent to following me on a platform where they know they're going to find my content if TikTok clips me. So without further ado, guys, I got shit I got to do. It's Saturday. It's 5:30 in the afternoon. I started super late on live. Don't forget, go to YouTube. Go subscribe, hit the notification bells. If you missed this live or you tapped in a little bit late today, you can always catch up a little bit later or right after this. What's dope about the computer when I'm going live on YouTube is that the minute I end the live, within like 5 or 6 minutes, the live that we did is already up on YouTube. So within the couple of minutes, it'll be up there for you guys to be able to consume and to share. And I appreciate that too. If you guys could start sharing some of the content as well to be able to get the message out to everybody. Like I said, I do believe in socialism, free education, free housing, and free healthcare. So even sharing the videos is showing me that socialist love and support to be able to get the message out to people. But peace, blessings, positivity. I'm going to catch you guys later. And like I always tell you, don't allow anybody to dictate the rest of your day. You in full control of your day, so take control over that shit. And if you got to close some doors behind you, close that shit, lock that shit, and keep it pushing. Because sometimes individuals need to be left on the other side of the door. You heard? Peace. We out.